Chapter 392. With Lu Hanyan by her side, Wanwan's progress was also very fast. Although her cultivation level was still at the third realm, her ocular techniques were becoming more and more powerful. Even Li Mu couldn't control himself after looking at her pair of big, watery eyes for a long time. Lu Hanyan left, but Wanwan was left behind to act as Li Mu's spy. Fortunately, Li Mu had Xiaobai. In this family, she was the only one who was wholeheartedly loyal to him. Okay. Li Mu put Wanwan down and asked, "They're gone. There are only 3 of us. What are we eating tonight?" Wanwan became energized at the mention of food. She rubbed her, but as she hugged Li Mu's arm and said, "Let's eat barbecued meat. No, let's eat hot pot again. No, barbecued meat again. How about hot pot again?" Wanwan was very conflicted about whether to eat hot pot or barbecued meat. In the end, Li Mu decided to eat hot pot and barbecued meat at the same time. After eating and drinking to their fill, she and Xiaobai cleaned up and washed the dishes. Li Mu went to the backyard and continued to repair the law bell. A complete law bell was very important to him. The sooner he repaired it, the sooner his family's safety would be completely guaranteed. However, he knew that those small spells that had never appeared in this world were almost used up. If the law bell couldn't be completely repaired before they were used up, he could only wait for it to slowly repair itself. However, if that was the case, he didn't know how long he would have to wait. A year or even several years was very likely. And this was under the condition that Li Mu had already repaired most of the cracks. If it weren't for Li Mu's intervention, it would probably take dozens or even hundreds of years just by relying on its self-repair ability. The next day, Li Mu went to the palace as usual. There wasn't much to do in the Imperial Secretariat recently. Li Mu handled his own business in the Imperial Secretariat in the morning. In the afternoon, he went to Chang'e Palace to help the Empress approve memorials and discuss the reform of the Department of Imperial Offerings with her. In Chang'e Palace, Li Mu sat at the side, carefully reading the important memorials. Zhou Yi leaned lazily on the dragon throne, reading a book called Strange Stories from a Chinese studio. Occasionally, she would raise her head to look at Li Mu. Seeing that he was seriously correcting the memorials, she lowered her head again to read. By the time Zhou Yi came to her senses, she had already been in the yamen for a long time. She looked up at Li Mu again and asked, "It's been a quarter of an hour. Why haven't you gone back yet?" Li Mu flipped open a new memorial. Without raising his head, he said, "My wife has returned to Mount Baiyun. I'm not in a hurry to return today. I'll read a few more memorials." Zhou Yi unconsciously sat up straight and asked, "Which wife?" Li Mu. Both of them went. "How long will you be gone?" 3 or 4 months. Zhou Yi put down the book in her hand and said, "Then you're not in a hurry to go back. Finish reading these memorials first." Li Mu shook his head and said, "I'm afraid that won't do. Xiaobai and Wanwan are still waiting for me to eat at home." Zhou Yi said, "I'll have the Mei Wei bring them to the palace. I haven't seen the little fox in a long time. I'll also order the Imperial kitchen to prepare some food. In a while you can all eat at my place." Li Mu was stunned for a moment. Then he could only nod and say, then okay. It seemed that ever since Lu Hanyan came to Shindu, the Empress hadn't gone to the Li Manor. In any case, there was no one at home. It didn't make much of a difference if he went back sooner or later. It was better to work overtime in the palace and get a working meal. Soon, Mr. Mei went to the Li Manor to pick up Wanwan and Xiaobai. It was Wanwan's first time entering the palace. At first, she was a little reserved. However, under the influence of Xiaobai, she soon became relaxed. The chatter of the 2 girls brought some liveliness to the usually lifeless Chang'e Palace. Li Mu noticed that when the Empress looked at Wanwan and Xiaobai, who were chasing each other in Chang'e Palace, there was a faint smile at the corner of her mouth. Li Mu's impression of the Empress was that she rarely smiled. At most, she was expressionless. Perhaps she saw her own teenage years in Wanwan and Xiaobai. However, their teenage years should be different. Wanwan and Xiaobai were at the age of innocence. At the Empress age, She should have become the crown princess and officially started her unfortunate life. While Li Mu was reviewing the reports, the Empress took Wan and Xiao Bai to the Imperial Garden to admire the flowers. Mr. Mei once said that the flowers in the Imperial Garden were all planted by the Empress herself. Planting and nurturing flowers was her greatest hobby. Who didn't like these beautiful things? If he really had the chance to kidnap the Empress in the future and live in seclusion with her, he would let her plant flowers all around the house. Every day when he opened the door, he would reap the joy of the whole day. After finishing the last report, Li Mu left Changle Palace and walked towards the Imperial Garden. Although he had been to Changle Palace more than 100 times, his fixed route was from the Secretariat to Changle Palace. He had never been to other places. Fortunately, Li Mu knew the direction of the Imperial Garden. After walking out of Changle Palace, he walked in a direction. After a few hundred steps, Li Mu suddenly sensed something and stopped in his tracks. He turned to look at a palace next to him. His heart was pounding. Suddenly, he had a strong urge to step into this palace. It seemed that there was something in this palace that was attracting him. Li Mu looked up at the top of the palace and saw the words, Ancestral Temple. He subconsciously walked towards the palace, but before he could get close, a loud shout suddenly came from the palace. Get lost! At the same time, a strong aura swept out from the palace and pressed down on Li Mu. Li Mu took a few steps back. His hair fluttered behind him, and his clothes fluttered. However, he also condensed an extremely strong force on his body. The two forces collided and formed a powerful impact. In the sky, several floating clouds suddenly scattered. At the same time, Li Mu's telekinesis condensed into force. A dragon's roar came from the palace. Then, a golden light suddenly flew out. It was a golden dragon. After flying out of the palace, it rushed towards Li Mu. The golden dragon was very fast. Li Mu had no time to dodge, nor did he try to. He did not feel any threat from the golden dragon. The golden dragon flew to Li Mu's side and instantly wrapped around his body. In the next moment, Li Mu's expression changed slightly. He felt that the telekinesis he had accumulated was quickly flowing into the golden dragon's body. Li Mu controlled his telekinesis so that it would not be taken away by the golden dragon. He grabbed the golden dragon's body with one hand, wanting to fling it away. However, his hand passed through the golden dragon's body. The dragon was actually an illusory object. It did not have a physical body at all. Seeing that the telekinesis he had painstakingly accumulated was about to be taken away by the dragon, Li Mu made up his mind and used the guiding technique to compete with it. The man and the dragon were evenly matched in the contest for the telekinesis. Neither could do anything to the other. At this moment, 3 figures walked out of the palace. The 3 of them were old men with white hair and beards. They wore crowns on their heads, which were different from the Empress's crown. They wore black dragon robes, and the golden dragon embroidered on their banners only had 4 claws. What shocked Li Mu was that the powerful aura emitted from the 3 of them was not weaker than the scruffy Taoist priests. There were actually 3 peak 6th realm experts in the palace. Seeing the golden dragon coiling around Li Mu's body, an old man's face darkened. He said coldly, "Those who disturb the Emperor's aura should be punished by death." He stretched out a withered finger and pointed at Li Mu from afar. A powerful force of heaven and earth quickly gathered. An illusory finger appeared in front of Li Mu's eyes. A terrifying aura was emitted from the finger. He was about to summon the Dao Bell to defend himself when a figure appeared in front of him. At this moment, the old man's right index finger had already pressed down. Crack! His outstretched finger was directly broken. He ignored his broken finger and looked at the figure in front of Li Mu in shock and anger. He gritted his teeth and said, "What are you doing?" The Empress looked at the 3 of them indifferently and said, "Go back." Then, she waved her hand gently. A powerful force swept the 3 old men back. The Empress glanced at the golden dragon again. The golden dragon trembled and quickly scurried back into the palace. It was only now that Li Mu sensed the golden dragon's abnormality. He looked in the direction of the palace and muttered, "Your Majesty, this is..." the Empress said. Emperor's aura. It was not the first time Li Mu had heard the name Emperor's aura. The Empress had been able to reach seventh realm because she had obtained it. However, he had only heard of Emperor's aura before. Today was the first time he had seen it. It was said that Emperor's aura was born from the telekinesis of the people of the 36 counties. Li Mu did not realize it earlier, but now he realized that the golden dragon itself was formed from telekinesis. However, the telekinesis was too vast and had already given birth to a spirit. The so-called Emperor's aura was the telekinesis spirit. If Li Mu absorbed a few more decades of telekinesis, his body should also give birth to a telekinesis spirit. This damned telekinesis spirit. It already had so much telekinesis, yet it still coveted this little bit from him. Wasn't it too greedy? However, it was the first time Li Mu had seen such a vast amount of telekinesis. If he had enough spiritual jades, he only needed to swallow this telekinesis spirit and probably reach sixth realm immediately. If this telekinesis spirit completely matured, it would not be impossible for him to reach seventh realm immediately. The Empress looked at Li Mu and asked, "Do you want to go in and take a look?" Li Mu paused and nodded slightly. He followed the Empress to the entrance of the palace. 3 old men stood in the palace. The leader said in a low voice, "This is the ancestral temple. Those who are not members of the royal family cannot enter." The Empress looked at them calmly. "I let him in. Do you have any objections?" The old man said, "We are the guardians of the ancestral temple. If you want to let an outsider in, you have to step over our dead bodies first." The Empress looked at Mr. Mei, who was waiting outside the palace, and said, "Mei Wei, arrange for someone to come and collect the body." After saying that, the other 2 old men pulled the old man away, one on the left and one on the right. "Royal brother, forget it. It's not a big deal. Didn't the Zhou family also come in back then? If he wants to see, let him see. It's not like he'll lose anything." Chapter 393. The 3 elders walked to the corner of the hall and sat down cross-legged on the futons. Li Mu followed the Empress into the hall. This hall was bigger than Li Mu had imagined. After walking in, the first thing that caught his eye was a high platform in the innermost part of the hall. On the high platform there were many memorial tablets. Li Mu glanced at them and saw that the names of the past emperors of the Great Zhou were written on the tablets. The one at the top was the founder of the Great Zhou, the founding emperor of the Great Zhou. The one at the bottom was the former emperor. The former crown prince had his power taken away by the Zhou family before he had officially inherited the throne, so he was not qualified to be listed. Below the high platform were 2 rows of small cauldrons. Li Mu counted. There were 36 cauldrons in total, the same number as the counties of the Great Zhou. Traces of golden light were drawn out of the small cauldrons and gathered in a large cauldron in the center of the hall. The golden dragon was swimming in the cauldron. Although it looked at the Empress with fear in its golden eyes, when it looked at Li Mu, its eyes were full of greed. Li Mu looked at the golden dragon, and some other thoughts arose in his mind. After reaching the 5th level, his cultivation had become very slow, so slow that he could barely feel any progress. If he could swallow this golden dragon, he could immediately reach the 6th level, which was worth at least 20 years of cultivation. Feeling Li Mu's gaze, the greed in the golden dragon's eyes immediately disappeared without a trace. With a whoosh, it dived into the cauldron and did not show its head again. Li Mu looked at the small cauldrons and asked the Empress, "Your Majesty, these cauldrons should correspond to the national temples of the 36 counties, right?" Zhou Yi nodded slightly. Li Mu looked at the small cauldrons and found that the golden light on them varied in intensity, brightness, and darkness. The strongest one was so dazzling that he could not look directly at it. The weakest one was only a thin ray, so dim that it seemed to be about to go out. The small cauldron that shone the brightest was connected to Zhong County where Luoyang was located. In the past year, many changes had happened in Luoyang. The people of Zhong County were united like never before. The further the counties were from the fairies' capital, the dimmer the light from the small cauldron connected to them. Only a few counties were slightly brighter. This meant that there was still a long way to go before he could fully condense the Emperor Qi. The golden dragon quickly flew out of the cauldron and circled around the Empress's head a few times before flying back into the cauldron. Li Mu noticed that all the psychokinesis on the Empress's body had been sucked away by it. As a king who was deeply loved by the people, the Empress's psychic power was no less than Li Mu's. Li Mu was a little angry when he saw this. The psychokinesis on the Empress was something that both Li Mu and her had worked hard for a long time. It was not easy for them to condense it, but it was all for someone else. He felt injustice for the Empress. After visiting the ancestral temple, Li Mu didn't stay here for long and walked out with the Empress. Not long after the two walked out, in the corner of the ancestral temple, 3 elders who were sitting cross-legged on prayer mats with their eyes closed slowly opened their eyes. One of the elders snorted. "Is this still the crown princess? She has changed. She wouldn't be so disrespectful to us in the past." Another elder said, "She was set up by the Zhou family to inherit the Emperor Qi and almost died. Sitting in this position, she was already full of resentment. How can her personality not change?" The last elder said slowly, "That's not important. In the past 6 months, the speed of condensing the Emperor Qi has obviously increased. I'm afraid it will mature again in 20 years. We need to urge them to work hard and cultivate. If they can enter the 6th realm, then they will have full confidence to refine the Emperor Qi." Changle Palace. Li Mu, Wanwan, Xiaobai, and the Empress were eating hot pot together. After walking around the ancestral temple with the Empress, Li Mu gained a lot of knowledge. So this was how the Emperor Qi that was related to the inheritance of the Great Zhou came about. It was no wonder that when the people of the 36 counties sent the People's Blood Letter, both the old and new parties chose to give in. If the imperial court completely lost the people's hearts, the state temples in the various counties would not be able to absorb psychokinesis. Naturally, there would be no way to send it to the ancestral temple, which would delay the condensation of the Emperor Qi. The 3 elders in the ancestral temple were members of the Shao royal family. Their status was extremely high, and their seniority was even higher than that of the previous emperor. The 3 of them were all at the peak of the 6th realm. It seemed that the old party's strength was still far stronger than the new party's. What the Zhou family relied on was their blood relationship with the Empress. Li Mu thought of a question and asked, "Your Majesty, why don't you absorb the Emperor Qi yourself? Will it allow you to enter the 8th realm?" Zhou blew on the tofu and said, "No." Li Mu thought and said, "But your Majesty is so young. You can be the emperor for another 100 years. There's no need to pass the throne." Zhou said indifferently, "Because I don't like it." Li Mu sighed. He only felt that it was unfair for her. She did not want to be the emperor, but she took on the responsibility of being the emperor. From the beginning to the end, when the Zhou family was planning, they never asked if what they gave was what she wanted. At this moment, Zhou looked at him again and said, "Unless you're willing to approve the memorial for 100 years. Li Mu picked up a piece of tofu and put it into his mouth. He did not care that it was hot and said decisively, "Since your Majesty doesn't like it, it's fine if you don't want to be the emperor. When the time comes, you can pass the throne to whoever you want. If your Majesty is willing, you can be my neighbor. We can open up 2 plots of land in front of the courtyard." Xiaobai nodded and said, Okay. I also want to be Big Sister Zhou's neighbor." Zhou patted her head and said, "Why don't you 2 not go back tonight? There are many empty rooms in Changle Palace. You can sleep here." Xiaobai looked at Li Mu. She had to ask for Li Mu's opinion no matter what. After seeing the scene in the ancestral shrine, Li Mu felt even more sorry for the Empress. He nodded and said, "Then you can sleep here." The Empress looked at Li Mu and said, "You don't have to go back either." Li Mu was stunned and asked, "Your Majesty, this is not very good, right?" Zhou said, "In any case, you have to enter the palace tomorrow morning. Just stay here. It's not the first time." What she said was somewhat reasonable. Changle Palace was only 100 steps away from the Secretariat. It was much closer than home, so he could sleep for a while longer. But since ancient times, Who would allow an official to sleep in the palace? The Empress didn't seem to think this was a big deal. She looked at Wanwan and said, "And this little girl, she can also stay in the palace." Wanwan looked hesitant and said, But Miss said that young master has to go home every night. He can't stay out all night." Xiaobai said, "But we're also with benefactor. We're staying at Big Sister Zhou's house. We're not some vixen." Wanwan was still hesitant. The Empress continued, "For breakfast tomorrow morning, you can also eat in the palace. There are dozens of pastries in the imperial kitchen. You can try them all." Wanwan grabbed Xiaobai's hand and said, "I think you're right. Even if Miss knows, she won't blame us." Xiaobai and Wanwan both agreed. Li Mu's opinion was not important. It wasn't 2-1, but 3-1. In any case, Lu Hanyan and Li Qing weren't here. Xiaobai and Wanwan were with him. There was no one waiting for him at home. It didn't make any difference whether he went back or not. Tonight, Li Mu still slept in the back hall. When he closed his eyes and cultivated in his room, he could hear a girl's giggles coming from the front hall. Li Mu had spent more time in Changle Palace than he had at home, so he knew very well that this palace was cold and lonely most of the time. Even when he was here, he and the Empress were both busy with their own things. Li Mu was reviewing memorials. The Empress was either reading or relaxing. The palace was as quiet as ever. After Wanwan and Xiaobai arrived, it was no longer as lively as before. Li Mu didn't cultivate until very late. He prepared to rest. Not long ago he had drawn a saint-level Fulu. His exhausted state of mind had not completely recovered. He still needed a period of quiet rest. Not long after Li Mu lay down, he seemed to sense something and sat up from the bed. He got off the bed and walked to the door. When he opened the door, he saw Wanwan and Xiaobai, wrapped in blankets, standing on either side of the door. Li Mu asked in confusion, "What are you two standing here for?" Wanwan wrapped the blanket tightly around her and whispered, "We can't sleep." Xiaobai continued, "Can we sleep with our benefactor?" One of them had a pitiful expression on her face, while the other looked at Li Mu with her big watery eyes. Li Mu opened the door and said helplessly, "Come in." The two figures immediately ran into Li Mu's room. They placed their blankets on the chair and crawled into Li Mu's bed. Fortunately, the bed in Changle Palace was very big. Even if 3 people slept on it, it wouldn't seem crowded. Li Mu had reason to suspect that this bed was originally built by the previous emperor for the convenience of sleeping with his concubines. This might also be the reason why Wanwan and Xiaobai couldn't sleep. In fact, when people slept, they only needed a small quiet room and a small bed. An overly spacious bedroom with an overly big bed wouldn't be able to sleep well. Perhaps this was the reason why the Empress didn't sleep in the middle of the night and always met Li Mu in his dreams. How lonely would it be if he was the only one sleeping in such a big Changle Palace? Li Mu couldn't bear it just thinking about it. The Empress had already been like this for 4 years. Looking at Wanwan and Xiaobai lying on the bed with only their heads sticking out, Li Mu suddenly didn't know how to sleep. If he slept next to Wanwan, Xiaobai would definitely be disappointed. If he slept next to Xiaobai, the one who would be disappointed would be Wanwan. Sleeping between the two of them, surrounded by the soft bodies of young girls, he had never experienced such a situation. Even if he forced himself to sleep, he wouldn't be able to sleep. Li Mu covered them with the blankets and said, "You two sleep first. I'll go out for a while." He put on his clothes and prepared to go out to the courtyard to get some fresh air. When he walked out, he saw a figure sitting on the roof of the front hall. From Li Mu's angle, a full moon rose behind her. She sat there quietly like a fairy in the moon. She was beautiful but also seemed especially lonely. The night was long. He wasn't the only one who didn't have the heart to sleep. Li Mu thought for a moment and flew up. Standing on the roof of Changle Palace, Li Mu realized that Changle Palace seemed to be at the highest point of the Imperial Palace. Standing here and looking down, he could see the entire Imperial Palace. He walked to the Empress's side and said softly, "Your Majesty, are you still not sleeping?" Zhou looked ahead and said indifferently, "You're not sleeping either, are you?" Li Mu said, "I'll go to sleep now." Sit down. Zhou spoke again in a tone that brooked no refusal. Talk with me for a while. Li Mu sat down beside him and asked, Is there something on your mind, Your Majesty? If she wasn't sleeping in the middle of the night, there must be something on her mind. The more meticulous a person was, the easier it was for them to be troubled. Zhou looked at the moon in the sky and asked, Who do you think I should pass the throne to? The Shao clan or the Zhou clan? Li Mu shook his head and said, I don't dare to speak rashly. Zhou said, Say it, there's no one here. As a subject, he shouldn't answer this question. However, after she said that, there was no ruler and subject on the roof of Chang'e Palace. There was only Zhou and Li Mu. There was something that Li Mu had been holding in his heart for a long time. As a friend, he had the need to tell her what was on his mind. Then I'll say it. Say it. Li Mu turned to look at the Empress and asked very confusedly, To the Shao clan, Your Majesty is an outsider. To the Zhou clan, Your Majesty is also an outsider. Instead of passing the throne to an outsider, why don't we have one ourselves? As soon as he finished speaking, he saw the Empress's stunned expression. Only then did Li Mu realize that there was a loophole in his words. When he said we, it meant that they were on the same side, not that he and the Empress had a child. To prevent the Empress from misunderstanding, Li Mu quickly explained, Your Majesty, please don't misunderstand. What I mean is, I'll give birth to mine, you give birth to yours. Chapter 394. Late at night, on the roof of the Chang'e Palace. Zhou looked calmly at Li Mu and asked, Has it been a long time since I taught you cultivation? Li Mu knew what she meant by cultivation and immediately said, You told me to be straightforward. If you blame me now, I won't say anything in the future. Zhou looked at him and finally looked away. I am the Empress. Li Mu said, The Empress also has the right to pursue love. Although she had already been married once, who said that the Empress couldn't marry again? In another world, that woman first married the father, then the son, and had countless men. Compared to her, the Empress was like a pure Shao by flower. So what if she had an Empress? Li Mu said seriously, Your Majesty is a disgrace to the Shao family. How could they tolerate the throne being taken by a woman with a different surname? If the Shao family takes power in the future, Your Majesty will certainly not leave any good words in the history books. And for the descendants of the Zhou family, Your Majesty is only their elder sister. How could you be closer to Your Majesty's own children? In fact, Li Mu had a little selfish motive here. History was written by the victors. Could be foreseen that whether it was the Zhou family or the Shao family who passed the throne, the Empress would probably not leave any good words in the history books revised by future generations. Then, as the only favored official of the Empress's era, how would the history books evaluate Li Mu? Bewitching the Emperor, treacherous officials in power, and favored officials causing chaos. Some unofficial history books might even smear the relationship between him and the Empress. Li Mu didn't intend to give them such a chance. He looked at the Empress and continued, Moreover, the Zhou family and the Shao family, for the sake of the throne, formed cliques and pursued selfish interests, regardless of the consequences. It wasn't easy for us to make up for the mistakes of the previous emperor. If Your Majesty passes the throne to them, won't the great Zhou repeat the same mistakes? Zhou was silent for a while, then stood up and said, I'm going to sleep. Li Mu said, Good night, Your Majesty. After Zhou left, Li Mu sat on the roof and watched the moon for a while before returning to his room. Wan and Xiao Bai were still awake. They were giggling under the covers. Li Mu walked to the bed and asked, Why haven't you slept yet? Xiao Bai said, We're waiting for our benefactor to return. After saying that, she and Wan moved outwards and inwards respectively, leaving space in the middle for Li Mu. Li Mu waved his hand and said, You guys sleep. I'll sleep on the floor. Xiao Bai hugged Li Mu's arm and said, Then let's sleep on the floor too. Wan also got up from the bed and said, Young master will sleep on the ground and we will sleep on the bed. If young miss finds out, she will say that we don't know the rules. Li Mu didn't know how the Empress slept that night, but he slept very soundly. Wan was on his left, and Xiao Bai was on his right. The bed was soft and fragrant, but when he woke up in the morning, his arms were a little numb. The Empress had already asked the kitchen to prepare pastries. Wan was shocked by the variety of breakfast. She had never thought that someone could have such a rich breakfast. In the past, she would feel very happy if she could eat 2 buns and an egg in the morning. Before breakfast was finished, she asked Li Mu indirectly where they were going to sleep tonight. After breakfast, Li Mu didn't let them go back. After all, it was just the 2 of them at home. Changle Palace was much bigger than the Li Mansion, so they didn't feel bored here. With Shangguan Li and Mr. Mei accompanying them, Li Mu felt that they were too happy to miss home. He went to the secretariat. When he passed by the Zongjing Temple, Zhang Chun came out and asked in surprise, "Where did you go last night?" Li Mu naturally couldn't tell him that he stayed in Changle Palace last night, so he said, "At home." Zhang Chun said, "I went to your house last night, but you weren't there." Li Mu said, "I went back very late last night. It was almost midnight." Then he asked, "Why are you looking for me?" Zhang Chun shook his head and said, "I wanted to have a drink with you, but it's fine now." Zhang Chun also didn't tell Li Mu that he was chased out of the house by his wife last night. He originally wanted to find Li Mu to stay the night, but he didn't see Li Mu come back even when he waited at the entrance of the Li residence until midnight. Obviously, he was lying. Li Mu said, "If there's nothing else, I'm going back to the secretariat." Zhang Chun waved his hand and said, "Let's go." Looking at Li Mu's back as he left, he thought about something in his heart. Yesterday, he saw that Lu Hanyan and Li Qing left Chengdu, which was why he chose to stay in the Li mansion. But on the night his wife left, Li Mu didn't come back. What did he do? Could it be that he met another woman in private? No. As far as he knew, Li Mu couldn't be such a person. At a certain moment, a light suddenly flashed in Zhang Chun's mind. The Zongjing Temple was located behind the secretariat. If Li Mu came from the palace gate, it was impossible for him to pass by here. Unless he came from another direction, Zhang Chun looked in the direction Li Mu came from. If he walked straight from here, he would reach Changle Palace. And Changle Palace was His Majesty's bedroom. He showed a look of realization on his face and said in shock, "So fast?" Prince Shou walked over from the direction of the palace gate and said, "Old Zhang, why are you here so early today? Come, play a few rounds with me." Zhang Chun followed behind Prince Shou and walked into the Zongjing Temple. He asked casually, "Your Highness, wasn't Prince Nanyang beheaded? What happened to his mansion?" Prince Shou said, "It was temporarily conferred by the imperial court. In the future, it may be awarded to officials who have made great contributions to the imperial court." "Why are you asking this?" Zhang Chun smiled and said, "Nothing, I'm just asking. After returning to the secretariat, Li Mu didn't delay. He seized the time to draft the new rules of the Department of Consecration. After finishing his own business in the morning, he still had to show the Empress the memorials in the afternoon. Now, she didn't worry about the imperial court at all. She left the small matters to Li Mu, and they discussed the important matters together. If they agreed, they would listen to her. If they disagreed, they would listen to Li Mu. When Li Mu was dealing with the memorials, she was idling on the side. She even wanted Li Mu to write a few more books for her to read. It had to be said that she was already acting like a self-indulgent ruler, and Li Mu himself was about to become a favored official of a dictatorship. After the preliminary draft of the new rules of the Department of Consecration was finished, a familiar figure stepped into Li Mu's duty room. Mr. Mei looked a little tired. Li Mu poured a cup of tea for him and asked, "What's wrong? Didn't sleep well last night?" Mr. Mei sat in Li Mu's seat. He leaned against the chair and rubbed the space between his eyebrows. He said, "Last night, I dealt with the internal guards until very late." Li Mu stood across from him and said, "If it's not too important, just leave it to your subordinates. Look at Her Majesty. She should be busier than you, but look at her. She's very idle every day. If she's not admiring flowers, she's reading books. How long has it been since she touched the memorials?" Mr. Mei glanced at him and asked, Her Majesty has only let you read the memorials for a few days, and you're already unwilling. Li Mu said, "It's not that I don't want to. Anyway, if I do more, Her Majesty will do less. As long as she's happy, it's fine. She doesn't have to worry about the memorials and give her inner demons an opportunity to take advantage of her. I suspect that her inner demons came from reading the memorials every day." Mr. May didn't continue this topic. He asked, "Did you say something again that made Her Majesty unhappy?" Li Mu said frankly, "I just said a few words of truth. Although the Empress's status was high in the entire imperial court, there were only 3 people who could be considered her own: Shangguan Li, Mr. May, and Li Mu. The 2 of them listened to everything the Empress said. These truths that would make the Empress uncomfortable could only be said by Li Mu." Mr. May asked, "What did you say?" Li Mu honestly told him the conversation last night. Mr. May glanced at him and asked, "Do you think that because Her Majesty favors you so much, you can say anything?" Li Mu said, "I'm also thinking for her sake." Mr. May thought for a moment and said, "You're thinking too simply. Her Majesty is the former Crown Princess and also the former Empress. If she really did that, what would the world think? All the court officials and the 4 major academies would stop her." Li Mu originally wanted to tell Mr. May that as long as she had absolute power, she could do anything. It was unlikely that she would have 3 palaces and 6 courtyards, because the mainstream view didn't approve of one woman having many husbands, and it would easily lead to criticism. However, it made sense to only have one empress. As long as the empress's power could suppress all resistance, the Great Zhou would have its first male empress. However, after thinking about it carefully, Li Mu felt a little uncomfortable. After all, who didn't want to be the sole empress's favorite? If he had an empress, the empress might not treat him as well as she did now. It wasn't a possibility, it was a certainty. When Lu Hanyan and Li Qing weren't around, he could stay in Changle Palace all day. When they came back, he could only stay in Changle Palace for 4 hours a day. It was the same principle. Li Mu had to admit that he was also a selfish person. He didn't want to share the empress's favor with others, even if that person was the empress. Therefore, he didn't say anything more. Instead, he looked at Mr. May and said, "Don't worry about Her Majesty. You should worry about yourself. If you don't find one now, it will be too late. Do you want me to introduce you to?" Mr. May looked at Li Mu without any emotion. Li Mu felt his hair stand on end under her gaze. Then he realized something and immediately said, "Don't you dare have any ideas about me. I have a family, and you're almost old enough to be my mother. We're not suitable." In a panic, Li Mu said what was on his mind. Fortunately, Mr. May was magnanimous and didn't get angry. He left after drinking a cup of tea. Wan Wan and Xiao Bai were both in Changle Palace. Li Mu's lunch was also there. In the afternoon, he stayed in Changle Palace to help the Empress deal with the memorials. He didn't return to the Secretariat. He walked out of the Secretariat and saw Mr. May standing not far ahead. She looked at Li Mu with an extremely unfriendly gaze, holding a stick in her hand. Chapter 395. You're saying I'm old. You're old enough to be your mother. Let me hear you call me mother. In Changle Palace, Li Mu was being chased up and down by Mr. May with a stick. He thought that after escaping to Changle Palace, Mr. May would restrain himself in front of the Empress. He didn't expect that the Empress would stand by and even eat melon seeds. Therefore, Changle Palace became even more lively. Mr. May was chasing Li Mu, Wan Wan was chasing behind, and Xiao Bai was chasing her. She couldn't catch up with Li Mu, and Xiao Bai and Wan Wan couldn't catch up with her either. Changle Palace was in chaos, and the Empress stood by and ate melon seeds. Later, Shangguan Li also joined in. Of course, she was helping Mr. May. Mr. May's reaction arc was also very long. He didn't explode in the Secretariat, but now he was extremely angry. Although Li Mu could continue hiding, it was not a good idea to continue hiding like this. Hence, he deliberately went easy on Lord May and let him hit his butt twice so that Lord May would calm down and stop. Then, this matter would be considered over. As a friend, Li Mu had already done his duty. In the afternoon, He showed some of his suggestions for the reform of the Department of Offerings to the Empress. The two of them exchanged some ideas, and this matter was finalized. The Department of Offerings wasn't considered an official office of the imperial court, and related matters didn't need to travel 3 provinces. After confirming the details with the Empress, Li Mu walked out of Chang'an Palace and went to the Department of Offerings. When he passed by Zongjing Temple, he happened to see Zhang Chun walking out. Zhang Chun asked, "Lord Li, where are you going?" Li Mu said, "I'm going to the Department of Offerings." Zhang Chun smiled and said, "I'm also going out of the palace. Let's go together." The two of them walked out of the palace and casually chatted for a while. Zhang Chun suddenly said with emotion, "It's all thanks to you. Otherwise, I don't know when I would be able to live in a big house with 4 entrances. It's good to have a big house. It's big and comfortable to live in." Li Mu understood the meaning behind his words. Old Zhang's greatest wish was to own a 5-sectioned house in the fairy's capital. This was also the common dream of many middle-aged men of his age. Owning a 5-section mansion in Chengdu was as difficult as owning a villa in Beijing's 3rd Ring Road, when housing prices were soaring in the future. This was something that most officials in Chengdu would never be able to achieve in their lifetime. Currently, he had already fulfilled 4/5 of his wish. Li Mu could understand Zhang Chun's stubbornness. He thought for a moment and said, "You've changed your residence so many times in the past year. If you change it again so soon, it'll be easy for people to criticize you. Wait for another half a year. I'll apply to His Majesty to change your residence to one of the 5. In the past 6 months, old Zhang had suffered a lot because of Li Mu. Not only did those people treat him as his subordinate, but they also called old Zhang his dog. This made Li Mu feel a little guilty. These words must have been very painful for old Zhang to hear. It was his duty to fight for Zhang Chun to fulfill his dream. Wasn't it just a 5-section house? As long as he whispered something to the Empress, it wouldn't be a problem at all. Zhang Chun waved his hand and said, "There's no need for that. I'm already very satisfied with the residence I'm living in now. By the way, what do you think the imperial court will do with the Duke of Nanyang's residence now that he's dead?" Li Mu looked at Zhang Chun in shock. The Duke of Nanyang's residence was 10 entrances. It was one of the largest private residences in the fairy's capital. There were some things that one was born with. If one didn't have them at birth, it was unlikely that they would have them for the rest of their lives. A 10-sectioned residence was one of them. Those who were qualified to live in such residences were members of the royal family with real power. A 5-sectioned residence was almost the limit of what an official could get. Any higher would depend on actual contributions. Expanding the territory, suppressing the demon nation, fixing the ghost region, and destroying the demon sect. If one could do any of these things, it wouldn't be excessive to be conferred the title of Duke, let alone a 10-sectioned residence. However, none of these were things that old Zhang could do. Li Mu looked at him helplessly and sighed, "Old Zhang, it's fine as long as a residence is big enough to live in. That's enough. Why do you want such a big residence? It's too big even for a pig, let alone a family of 3. Zhang Chun also sighed and said, "Who would complain about having too many residences? I don't want you to help me fight for it now. It won't be too late to help me achieve it when you're successful in the future." Li Mu nodded and said, "I'll try my best." After all, he wasn't the Empress, and the Duke of Nanyang's residence wasn't his. Even if Li Mu was successful in the future, it was unlikely that he would help him fight for it, unless he became the Emperor or Empress himself. Li Mu treated this as Zhang Chun's unrealistic fantasy. He threw it to the back of his mind and came to the consecration department. Although the current consecration department didn't have as many people as before, it was more cohesive. There wouldn't be a situation where the consecrators weren't under the jurisdiction of the imperial court like before. In terms of high-end combat strength, there was also an additional peak 6th realm expert. Including the 2 remaining high consecrators, the current strength of the Great Zhou's consecration department was enough to wipe out most of the branch sects of the 10 demon sects. Li Mu came this time to inform everyone about the changes to the consecration department. Among them, the biggest change was their salary. The Great Zhou court was much more generous to the foreign consecrators than its own officials. Not to mention that every consecrator was allocated a residence of at least 2 courtyards. Their salary was also 10 times or even dozens of times that of ordinary officials. The resources that the high consecrators received from the imperial court every year were astronomical figures. From today onwards, the salaries of all consecrators would be lowered. They would be divided into several grades according to their cultivation, and each grade would have a basic salary. In addition to the basic salary, they would receive a commission based on the number of missions they went out on and the degree of completion of the missions. How many resources they would receive in the end would depend on their own abilities. If they were more diligent, the resources they would receive every year would far exceed what they received before. This was to change the previous situation where many consecrators in the consecration department squandered resources. They lived in residences bestowed by the imperial court and only came to the consecration department for a few days a year. They mingled in the various major entertainment venues of the divine capital. The annual salary from the imperial court, as well as the money they earned through their own abilities, could sustain their drunken and extravagant lives. Cultivation was dry and difficult. A portion of cultivators, because they could not bear this kind of loneliness, or because they did not have any hope of breaking through, would choose to indulge in pleasure. Li Mu could not control their pleasure, but he did not allow them to use the resources of the national treasury for pleasure. The things of the national treasury were the empress's things. Although not all of the empress's things belonged to Li Mu, sooner or later, some of them would belong to him. In this way, these consecrators were basically Li Mu's own resources. The salary reduction of the consecration department this time was only relative. In reality, their salary was still much higher than that of ordinary officials. The nature of the 2 jobs was different. The officials sat in the yamen, slacking and chatting, and a day would pass. Many times, the consecrators risked their lives, so they should receive more. Li Mu looked at the people of the consecration department and said, "The imperial court invests a great deal of resources here every year, and the consecration department does not support idle people. Which consecrator has an objection to what I said earlier?" The crowd was noisy for a moment, then finally quieted down. Not a single person stood out. Although the reform this time had indeed reduced the treatment of the consecrators, as long as they were diligent and did not cheat, they would receive more than before. This was equivalent to distributing the resources of those lazy people to those diligent people. The majority of people agreed with this point from the bottom of their hearts. In the past, when they saw those people, because they had made friends with the old party, dawdled in the consecration department, and were able to receive the same amount of cultivation resources as them, or even more than them, they felt somewhat indignant. From now on, this kind of situation would no longer exist. Li Mu swept his gaze over the crowd and asked, "Does no one have any objections?" The consecrators thought to themselves, those who had objections to him had already been driven out of the consecration department. Of those who remained here, who would have any objections, who would dare to have any objections? After a long time, seeing that no one spoke, Li Mu nodded and said, "Since no one has any objections, then this matter is decided. In the future, if you have any questions, you can communicate with the 2 great consecrators at any time." In the consecration department, the sloppy Taoist priest was only a mascot and did not care about the specific affairs of the consecration department. The ones in charge of the consecration department were still the 2 great consecrators from before. One of them was called Chun Xian, and the other was called Chun Mo. They were a pair of twin brothers, and were not from the Great Zhou. They had been invited by the imperial court to become consecrators for many years when they traveled to the Great Zhou. Although these 2 were not as strong as the sloppy Taoist priest, they were still rare 6th realm experts. For the sake of those 2 heavenly secret talismans, Li Mu believed that they would change their usual style. After purging the old party's influence here and reforming the old system, the matter of the consecration department came to an end. What followed would gradually return to the right track, and Li Mu did not need to worry about it. After leaving the consecration department, he returned to Changle Palace. He had come to take Wan Wan and Xiao Bai back. For a foreign subject to bring 2 little girls to live in the Empress's chambers, it was ultimately improper. This time, Xiaobai did not express anything, but Wan was somewhat reluctant to part with him. The imperial kitchen had gathered all the delicacies of the 36 counties of the Great Zhou, and she had not even tasted 1% or 1,000th of them. To her, leaving here was no different from losing the entire world. In the Chang'e Palace, Zhou Qiong sat on the dragon throne and looked down at Li Mu. He said, "Before your wife comes back, you can live in the palace." Li Mu hesitated. "Your Majesty, this isn't very good, is it?" "What's not good about it?" Zhou said indifferently. "This place is not far from the Secretariat, and it saves you the time of going to and from the Yamen every day. I will let the Imperial Kitchen arrange 3 meals a day, and it will also save you the time of cooking. With this time saved, how many reports can you handle and how many things can you do?" Li Mu stared at her in a daze. Zhou indeed did not have the surname Bai. She was completely the Zhou Bapi of the Great Zhou. Even Zhou Bapi would cry if she heard of her exploitation of Li Mu. At this moment, Zhou continued, "Wan and Xiaobai should also stay here. When I have time, I can also guide them in their cultivation. A few months' time is enough for Xiaobai to advance to the 5-tailed realm, and Wan will also advance to the 4th realm very soon. At that time, her spirit eyes will be even more powerful." Looking at Wan and Xiaobai's expectant gazes, Li Mu could not bear to say no in the end. He did not dare to, because although the Empress looked at him calmly, there was also an unquestionable threat in her calmness. Of course, the reason why Li Mu did not refuse was that he also saw the anticipation in the depths of the Empress's eyes. Although the Empress had everything, she had also lost everything. What she had was power and strength. What she had lost was family, friendship, and all the beautiful emotions in the world. No one would have such feelings for the Empress, except for the naive Xiaobai and Wan. Xiaobai was naive and innocent because she had not seen much of the world. And to Wan, if she was not given good food, the Empress would be the Empress. If she was allowed to eat as much as she wanted in the Imperial Kitchen, she would be the dearest big sister Zhou. The Empress was too lonely. She needed companionship more than anyone else. The existence of Wan and Xiaobai brought endless liveliness to this dead Chang'e Palace. This liveliness was exactly what the Empress needed. Zhou looked at Li Mu and asked, "Do you have any objections to what I said?" Li Mu bowed and said, "This subject obeys." Chapter 396. Li Mu really didn't dare to have any objections to what the Empress had said. If he rejected her now, after tonight, he would have to beg the Empress to move into Chang'e Palace the next morning. She looked quite magnanimous, but in reality, she was more petty than anyone else. If she was slightly dissatisfied, Li Mu would just have to wait to meet her in her dreams at night. Besides, she also promised to help Xiaobai and Wan evolve. This was also something Li Mu couldn't reject. With Wan and Xiaobai's current cultivation, there was already very little that Li Mu could help them with. However, following the Empress would undoubtedly bring them great benefits. He didn't dare to say that he could help them reach Realm 6, but it wouldn't be a problem to help them reach Realm 5 or Realm 4. Under Mr. May's lead, Wan and Xiaobai went to the Imperial Kitchen to clean out. After all, she was his silly girl. She was so unruly. Li Mu felt a little embarrassed. He explained, when she was young, Wan's hometown was in a famine. When her parents brought her to escape, they left her on the road to save food for her younger brother. She almost starved to death. Later, she was lucky enough to survive, but she ended up with the problem of not being able to eat enough. Wan's illness was psychological, not physical. In the past, Li Mu was worried that her body would have problems eating, but now he didn't have to worry. As long as she liked, she could eat as much as she wanted. Zhou said somewhat angrily, "Should she be abandoned just because she's a girl?" Li Mu couldn't answer her. Many people in Great Zhou still had the goal of continuing the family line as their life goal. The idea of favoring boys over girls was the mainstream in the hearts of the people. Li Mu could say, "Not everyone likes sons. I prefer daughters. One of the most romantic things for a man is to have a cute daughter, buy her the most beautiful clothes, make her the most fun toys, and spoil her like a little princess? Zhou looked at him and asked, "You want your daughter to become a princess?" Li Mu was stunned for a moment before he explained, "It's just a metaphor. If his daughter was a princess, the empress would have to give him the position of emperor." Zhou thought about it and said, "Since you don't like sons so much, give your first son to me." Hey. Li Mu looked at her in a daze, his face full of confusion. "Why should I pass the throne to an outsider? The Xiao family is not united with me, and I am no longer a member of the Zhou. Your first son was sent to my side when he was born, and he took my surname. I taught him to cultivate from a young age, and you taught him how to govern the country. I believe that when he grows up, he will definitely be a qualified emperor." Li Mu had thought that the empress had already exploited him enough. He had not thought that she could go even further. Not only did she have designs on him, but she also had plans for his unborn son's life. Li Mu flatly refused. "That won't do. Even if I agree, my wife won't." Zhou said, "That might not be the case." Li Mu shook his head and said, "Even if they agree, I won't." Zhou asked, "I want to raise your son as the future emperor. Why won't you agree?" Li Mu had no reason to agree. He was the future headmaster of the Fulu school. His son could be considered the second generation of an immortal. His status was not lower than that of the Great Zhou's crown prince. Moreover, in the history of the Great Zhou, none of the emperors had lived long. He knew how tiring it was to review memorials. How could he let his own son suffer like this? He did not answer directly. Instead, he looked at the empress and said, "If your majesty wants a son, why go through so much trouble?" The empress's eyes narrowed slightly. She looked at him and asked, "What did you say?" Li Mu looked back at Shangguan Li, who was standing at the door, and said, "Commander Shangguan is still young. She is also loyal to your majesty. She is not an outsider. If your majesty doesn't want to pass on the Xiao and Zhou families, you can let Commander Shangguan bear a son." Shangguan Li, who was eating melons, glared at Li Mu fiercely. She clasped her hands and said, "Your majesty, I don't like men." No wonder Li Mu always looked at her with anger. She didn't like men, so he couldn't force her. Li Mu said, "And Mr. Mei?" Mr. Mei walked in from outside and asked, "What's wrong with me?" Li Mu said, "I'm praising you for being loyal to your majesty. I'm a little hungry. I'll go to the kitchen to find something to eat. You guys talk." After saying this, he quickly walked out of the Changel Palace. Li Mu deeply experienced the empress's laziness again. Her laziness in the past was just to let Li Mu help her approve the memorials. Now she was so lazy that she didn't even want to have a child herself. Unfortunately, Li Mu couldn't do this for her. Besides, he and Lu Hanyan didn't plan to have a child so early. The empress's wishful thinking couldn't be realized so easily. In order to prevent the empress from having any ideas about him, he couldn't let her have a child or help her have a child. In the following days, Li Mu didn't mention this matter again. Living in the imperial palace was far more boring than Li Mu imagined. In order not to be seen by the officials of the Shangya, he had to get up early every day and travel between the Changel Palace and the Secretariat. Occasionally, he would go to the kitchen to cook a bowl of noodles and a cup of soup for the empress. After a long time, Li Mu wasn't the only one who couldn't stand it. Even Wan Wan and Xiao Bai weren't as lively as they were at the beginning. Although the imperial palace was good, and to Wan Wan it was heaven. However, if she stayed here every day, heaven would become a prison. In the Changel Palace, Li Mu finished approving the memorials and saw the two girls leaning on the table listlessly with one hand supporting their cheeks. He thought for a moment and said, "Why don't we go outside the palace to play tomorrow?" Okay. Wan Wan and Xiao Bai's eyes lit up, and they immediately got up from the table. These days they had been bored to death. It just so happened that there was no morning court tomorrow, and it was also a rest day. Li Mu turned to look at the empress, who was lying lazily on the chair reading a book, and asked, "Your Majesty, do you want to go together?" Zhou Yi's attention had been on Li Mu since just now. Hearing this, she said unhurriedly, "You arrange it. It was just an ordinary trip, and there was nothing to arrange." As long as they could leave this cage-like imperial palace, even if it was just to find a place to enjoy the scenery, they would be in a much better mood. They left the imperial palace together the next day. Outside the divine capital, Li Mu chose a mountain with a nice view. He used magic to clear an empty space and spread out a clean blanket. Then, he placed some pastries and preserved fruits that he had prepared from the imperial kitchen on top of it. Mr. Mei and Shangguan Li set up a stove not far away, and they would barbecue meat later. After Wanwan and Xiao Bai left the imperial palace, they went wild, chasing rabbits and catching pheasants. Li Mu lay on the stall with his hands behind his head. Everywhere he looked, there was only the blue sky. At this moment, the gloominess and depression in his heart were swept away. As expected, a place like the imperial palace couldn't be stayed for too long. Looking at the square sky all the time was not good for one's health. Zhou sat on the blanket and looked at the barren hills around her. With a flick of her finger, a crystal light was flicked into the soil. As a result, green buds began to appear on the barren land around them. Soon, grass began to grow, and colorful wildflowers bloomed. The air soon emitted a refreshing fragrance. Zhou lay beside Li Mu and looked up at the sky with him. After a while, she said softly, "It's almost the new year." If she didn't remind him, Li Mu wouldn't have realized that it was really the new year. Li Mu was forced to stay in Changle Palace by the Empress and did the work she was supposed to do day and night. Apart from Changle Palace and the Secretariat, she didn't go out and didn't take a step out. She had already lost track of time. He didn't expect that he couldn't spend the first New Year with Lu Hanyan and Li Qing. Cultivators didn't pay much attention to the new year. The old men of Mount Baiyun spent most of their time in seclusion. They could be said to have truly transcended the secular world. However, Li Mu couldn't. He hoped that on New Year's Eve, his family could gather together and have a New Year's Eve dinner. The Empress reminded him. Li Mu took out the sound transmission magic treasure that Shen Jizi gave him. After activating it, he said, "Senior brother, help me find Qingqing." Zhou glanced at Li Mu and closed her eyes. Her chest heaved slightly. As Li Mu's voice fell, Lu Hanyan's voice came from the magic treasure. "Qingqing, Qingqing, do you only have Qingqing in your heart? She's in seclusion and doesn't have time to talk to you?" Li Mu said awkwardly. "Didn't you follow senior sister to visit other sects? Why are you still at Mount Baiyun?" Lu Hanyan said, "We haven't left yet. Why are you looking for Qingqing?" Li Mu said without hesitation, "I miss you guys." Lu Hanyan said sourly, "You only have Qingqing in your heart?" Li Mu took a while to coax her. Then he asked, "It's New Year's Eve soon. Are you guys going back to Chengdu for New Year's?" Lu Hanyan said, "She's in seclusion. I'm going to Xuanzong with Master soon. Can't go back." Li Mu was a little disappointed. He said, "All right then." After putting away the sound transmission magic treasure, Li Mu looked at the Empress. Seeing her arms crossed, he asked in surprise, "Your Majesty, what's wrong?" Zhou said lightly, "Nothing. I just feel a little cold." Although the weather wasn't too warm, she wouldn't feel cold even if it was 100 degrees colder. Li Mu knew that she was probably choked by their public display of affection. He didn't dare to point it out. He said, "They're not coming back this year. Why don't we make do at Changle Palace for New Year's Eve?" Zhou glanced at him and said, "Why do you have to make do? If they can't come back, you can go to Mount Baiyun to find them." What she said made sense. Li Mu nodded and said, "Then I'll take a leave first. After the 15th, I'll return to Chengdu." Zhou took a deep breath and asked, "You're not going to attend the court assembly on the first day of the new year, right? Can I not attend? What do you think?" Li Mu thought about it and decided not to. The court assembly only happened once a year. It wasn't good to miss it. Moreover, Li Qing would be in seclusion and Lu Hanyan wouldn't be in Beijun. If he went to Mount Baiyun, would he have to eat with those old men? He might as well stay in Changle Palace and make do with the Empress. Thinking of this, he shook his head and said, "Then I won't invite you." Zhou said, "You can invite me. I approve your leave." Li Mu said firmly, I won't invite you. Zhou looked at him and said, I gave you a chance, but you didn't want it. Don't say that I'm harsh on you in the future. Li Mu went against his conscience and said with difficulty, Your Majesty, you're not harsh on me at all. Li Mu sighed a few times in his heart. Then, he lay down obediently and enjoyed this rare leisure time while enjoying the mountain breeze. Halfway up the mountain, near the peak, 3 figures walked slowly on the mountain path. Zhang Chun sighed and said, Madam, listen to me. I went to the brothel last time to catch someone, not to do anything else. We've been married for so many years. Don't we trust each other at all? Madame Zhang said, I believe you. But where did you go the night I kicked you out? Zhang Chun said, I found an inn to sleep in. Madame Zhang asked, Didn't you go to the Li residence? His wife isn't in Fairy's capital. There's no one at home. Why didn't you stay at his place? Zhang Chun said, He's not at home. Madame Zhang said in surprise, His wife just left and he's not going home at night. That can't be. Li Mu isn't that kind of person. Zhang Chun waved his hand and said, Don't worry about that. Madame Zhang said unhappily, What do you mean don't worry about that? If he's really that kind of person, you should stay away from him. Don't be led astray by him. Zhang Chun shook his head and said, Don't interrupt if you don't understand. Enjoy the scenery. It's not easy to get a day off. The scenery here is not bad. At this time, the family of 3 had reached the peak. Zhang Yi looked up at the empty space in the distance and said, There's someone there. Zhang Chun looked over and happened to meet the eyes of a woman. Madame Zhang was shocked and said, Isn't that Li Mu? Who's the woman beside him? They're alone in broad daylight. What are they doing in the wilderness? I didn't expect him to really be that kind of... Before Madame Zhang could finish her words, Zhang Chun covered her mouth. After that, he held Madame Zhang in one hand and his daughter in the other and flew down the mountain on a cloud. In the blink of an eye, they disappeared without a trace. Li Mu looked in the direction. The Empress was looking and asked, Your Majesty, what's wrong? The Empress retracted her gaze and said, Nothing. A few deer ran past just now. Speaking of deer, Li Mu remembered that he brought half a deer leg from the imperial kitchen today. He put it in the space of the flask heaven and marinated it with honey. He stood up and said, Your Majesty, rest for a while. I'll go prepare the barbecue. He walked to a place not far away and took out the deer leg and some barbecue that he had prepared. He put them on the grill and put charcoal under it. Barbecue with charcoal was much better than barbecue with magic power. At the same time, on the main peak of Mount Baiyun, Li Qing looked at Lu Hanyan beside her and said helplessly, Why don't you tell him? Lu Hanyan snorted and said, Who knows what he's been doing after we left the divine capital? This time we'll sneak back and catch him by surprise. If he's obedient, it'll be a surprise. If he's not obedient, humph? She looked at Li Qing and said, I know you care about him, but you can't tell him in advance. We have to stand on the same side. Otherwise, if there really is a 5th or 6th person in the future, it'll be too late for you to cry. Li Qing nodded and said, I'll listen to you. Outside the divine capital, on the top of a barren mountain with beautiful scenery, Zhou Yi took a small piece of deer meat that Li Mu cut with a knife and said, Left Assistant Minister Zhang Chun of the Ministry of Personnel. He's already a 4th-rank official. Go back and check if there are any empty 5th-rank residences in the imperial court. Give them to him. Li Mu had planned to find an opportunity to help old Zhang next year. Since the Empress mentioned it, he could arrange it for him now. He nodded and said, Yes, Your Majesty. North Court. When Li Mu handed the title deed of a certain 5th-rank residence to Zhang Chun, he was not as happy as Li Mu imagined, but he still patted him on the shoulder and said, Thank you, brother. Li Mu shook his head and said, No need to thank me. This time, the Empress rewarded you on her own initiative. Zhang Chun said, It's all the same, all the same. Li Mu looked behind Zhang Chun and saw Madame Zhang giving him a strange look. Then she turned and walked into the room. Li Mu looked away and asked in confusion, What's wrong with Madame Zhang? Did I offend her in any way? Zhang Chun waved his hand and said, Ignore her. It's just a woman's opinion. He took the title deed, patted his chest, and said, "Don't worry, I know what I'm doing. I'll say what I should say, and I won't say anything that I shouldn't say." Li Mu looked at him in confusion and asked, "What are you talking about?" Zhang Chun looked at Li Mu and was stunned for a moment. Then he also looked confused and said, "Yes, what am I talking about? I don't know anything. I didn't see anything. Haha." Li Mu felt that old Zhang was strange today, but he couldn't tell what. He walked through the streets, and there were still countless people greeting him warmly. "Lord Li, long time no see. Did you leave the divine capital a while ago?" "Yes, I haven't seen Lord Li for at least half a month." "Did Lord Li go out on business?" Li Mu smiled at the people and nodded. "Yes, I went out for more than half a month." Since the last picnic, Li Mu would take Wan Wan and Xiaobai out of the palace every few days. Under his invitation, the Empress reluctantly agreed. After changing her appearance, she went shopping with them, ate at the roadside stalls, and bought some cheap jewelry that cost a few coins. When she agreed, she was more reluctant than anyone else, but when it came to shopping, she was more excited than anyone else. The things she bought alone were more than Wan Wan and Xiaobai combined. Although most of them were useless, she still enjoyed it and never got tired of it. A few days before the new year, the divine capital was bustling and joyous. On New Year's Eve, Li Mu opened the door and a cold breeze hit him in the face. He looked up at the sky. The sky was gray, and snowflakes were floating in the air. Although the divine capital wasn't in the south, it rarely snowed in the winter. The snowflakes fell on the ground and quickly melted. "It's snowing." Wan Wan and Xiaobai ran out of the room barefooted. They stood in the courtyard and opened their arms to embrace the snowflakes. Li Mu slapped their butts and said, "Go back and put on your clothes and shoes before coming out." Wan Wan and Xiaobai loved snow. They wanted to build a few snowmen to play with. Unfortunately, the snow in the divine capital wasn't heavy. It melted as soon as it touched the ground. Li Mu tried to use his magic. Although the snowflakes in front of the palace were heavier, it was still far from enough. The Empress walked out of the Changle Palace. She looked at Wan Wan and Xiaobai, who were waving at the sky in anticipation. Her hands formed a few seals, and a white light flew out from her hand and went straight to the clouds. The snowflakes suddenly became heavier and fell down. Soon, a layer of snow accumulated on the ground. Outside the palace, the people of the divine capital also walked out of their houses. They looked at the snowflakes in the sky with satisfaction. It's been a long time since the divine capital snowed so heavily. Next year will be a good year. Ever since Her Majesty ascended the throne, the lives of the people have been getting better and better. In front of the Changle Palace, Xiaobai and Wan Wan had already built a few snowmen. Although they were called snowmen, they were more like snow sculptures. The snowmen they built didn't have round heads and big bodies. Instead, they were as tall as a person and looked very lifelike. Xiaobai was carrying a little fox in her arms. Wan Wan was carrying two buns on her head. The taller figure beside her was Li Mu. Beside Li Mu was the Empress, who was wearing an imperial robe and an imperial crown. The four snowmen stood in front of the palace like pieces of art. Not only did they have the same figure and appearance as the others, but even their auras were similar. Wan Wan looked at her masterpiece with satisfaction. Then, she scratched her head and said, "I think I forgot something." "Soon," she remembered. She slapped her head and said, "I forgot about Miss and Sister Qing." Soon, Lu Hanyan and Li Qing's snow sculptures also appeared in the square. Wan Wan nodded in satisfaction and said, "This is what a family should be." Li Mu thought to himself, if Lu Hanyan didn't come back soon, her sweet little jacket would be taken away by the Empress. He walked to Wan Wan and Xiaobai and asked, "Tonight, are we going home or staying here?" Wan Wan said without hesitation, "Miss and Sister Qing aren't at home. Let's celebrate the New Year here with Sister Zhou. There must be a lot of dishes for the New Year's Eve dinner in the palace." Zhou said, "There are more than 100 delicious dishes for the New Year's Eve dinner in the palace." Wan Wan tugged at Li Mu's sleeve and whispered, "Young master, Li Mu rubbed her head and said, "Then let's stay here." On New Year's Eve, the Empress dismissed all the guards on duty. Even Mr. Mei and Shangguan Li were driven home by her. There were only 4 people left in Changle Palace. In addition to the New Year's Eve dinner prepared by the Imperial Kitchen, the 4 of them also made dumplings together. From the skin to the filling of the dumplings, they prepared everything bit by bit. In Changle Palace, the dishes were all served. The 4 of them stood in front of the table and raised their wine glasses at the same time. At the same time, North Court, Li Mansion. On New Year's Eve, Lu Hanyan and Li Qing, who had rushed back to Chengdu, stood in the courtyard with confusion on their faces. Lu Hanyan scanned the entire Li Mansion with her mind. She didn't find Li Mu, Wan, or Xiao Bai. She frowned slightly and asked in confusion, "Where are they?" On New Year's Eve, they wanted to give Li Mu a surprise, but they were the ones who were surprised. On New Year's Eve, when families reunited, where did Li Mu, Wan, and Xiao Bai go? Lu Hanyan took out a sound-transmitting magic treasure. After activating it, she said in a bad mood, "Where are you?" In Changle Palace, Li Mu heard the voice from the sound-transmitting magic treasure in his hand and said in surprise, You're at home." Chapter 397. Zhou Yi put down her wine cup and asked Li Mu calmly, "Is your wife back?" Li Mu nodded and said, "They're at home now." Zhou Yi said calmly, "Then let's go back." As soon as she said this, the scenery before Li Mu, Xiao Bai, and Wan changed. When they appeared again, they were already in the courtyard of the Li residence. Lu Hanyan looked at the 3 people who suddenly appeared and asked, "What's the matter with you guys?" Li Mu said awkwardly, We were in the palace just now." Lu Hanyan frowned and asked, "What were you doing in the palace on New Year's Eve?" Li Mu explained, "Didn't you say that you guys weren't coming back? Only Wan, Xiao Bai, and I were left at home? Only Her Majesty was in the palace. We thought that we could have dinner together tonight and have each other's company." Lu Hanyan looked at Wan and Xiao Bai and asked, "Is that so?" Xiao Bai and Wan nodded repeatedly. Lu Hanyan walked to the stone table in the courtyard and reached out her finger to gently wipe it. Looking at the dust on her hand, she asked Li Mu, "You guys have been eating this meal for at least half a month, right?" Li Mu said, "Let me explain first. If the imperial court was a company and the empress was the boss, Li Mu would be the employee that the boss valued the most. As a boss who cared about her employees, she understood that Li Mu had to travel a long way to and from work, so she let him stay near the company in her own villa. Wasn't this normal? On New Year's Eve, his wife was at home. The boss was touched that he had worked overtime day and night, so it wasn't too much to treat him to a New Year's Eve dinner, right?" Lu Hanyan looked at Li Mu and asked, "So, for the past half a month, the 3 of you have been living in the palace?" Li Mu nodded. Lu Hanyan didn't make trouble for Li Mu, but Wan was called to her room. Li Mu didn't dare to follow her. He glanced at Li Qing, and Li Qing gave him a helpless look. Obviously, she was now on the same side as Lu Hanyan. Inside the room, Lu Hanyan tapped Wan's forehead and said, "What did I tell you before I left? I told you to keep an eye on him and make sure he doesn't come back at night. But you guys are good. You just don't come back with him." Wan lowered her head and looked at her feet. She sobbed a few times and tears dripped down her face. This made Lu Hanyan at a loss. She said in a panic, "Why are you crying? I haven't said anything yet." Wan wiped her tears and said in a muffled voice, "There were so many dishes. I haven't eaten a single bite yet." Lu Hanyan didn't hear what she said clearly. Seeing that she was crying sadly, she could only hug her and comfort her. Okay. I don't blame you. Don't cry." Fortunately, Li Mu didn't sleep in the palace alone. He had Wan and Xiao Bai to accompany him. He didn't do anything to let her down. At most, there was a little more dust in the house, but to clean it up was just a small spell. Now, Li Mu was facing a very serious problem. He made the decision to have New Year's Eve dinner at Changle Palace after learning that Lu Hanyan and Li Qing wouldn't come back tonight. so he didn't buy vegetables in advance. After all, if they were in the palace, he wouldn't have to worry about these things at all. So what were they eating now? It was New Year's Eve. Every family was eating reunion dinner in the middle of the night. Even if they went out to buy vegetables, it would be too late. It was a pity that they hadn't even touched a single bite of the sumptuous meal on the table in Changle Palace. Little White was slightly better off, but Wan Wan was on the verge of tears. When the Empress had moved her home, her chopsticks were still in her hand. There was only one way to have a normal New Year's Eve. Changle Palace. Zhou sat on the roof of Changle Palace. She didn't touch the New Year's Eve dinner that the imperial kitchen had prepared with great care. The snow had stopped, but after Li Mu and the others left Changle Palace, it started to fall again. Moreover, it seemed to be falling more and more heavily. Zhou allowed the snow to fall on her body. She silently looked at the lights of Shindu on New Year's Eve. It was the busiest night in Shindu, but Changle Palace was as cold and cheerless as usual. This was the liveliness of the common people. It had nothing to do with her. At a certain moment, she felt the spirit snail in the flask space vibrate. Zhou stretched out her hand. The spirit snail floated in her palm. She looked at it for a while and put it away, ignoring it. A moment later, she took it out again and asked, "Why are you looking for me again?" Wan Wan's aggrieved voice came from the spirit snail. "Sister Zhou, there's so much food. Can you finish it all by yourself?" Although Lu Hanyan often complained that the Empress was too harsh on Li Mu, when she really saw the Empress, she kept her head down. She didn't even dare to look at her. She didn't have the arrogance she had in front of Li Mu. In the hearts of the women of the Great Zhou, the Empress was like a god. It wasn't just the women of the Great Zhou. In the countries of Zhu province, no matter if they were human, ghost, or demon, as long as they were female, they all admired the Empress. She was less than 30 years old, but she was sitting in the most powerful empire in Zhu province. Her strength had also reached the upper 3 realms that cultivators dreamed of. She was the first person in history. This number 1 person included the man. People who weren't familiar with her were easily intimidated by her noble and powerful aura. Lu Hanyan was one of them. In Changle Palace, she even spoke much less than usual. Fortunately, with Wan Wan and Xiaobai, especially Wan Wan, the atmosphere of this special New Year's Eve dinner didn't seem so awkward. The people of the Great Zhou had the custom of enduring the New Year. Tonight, they generally didn't sleep. They had to tidy up when they got home, so Li Mu and the others simply stayed in Changle Palace. In order to make it easier to get through the long night, Li Mu used more than 100 pieces of spirit jade to carve a set of mahjong tiles. Of course, no one present was an ordinary person. For the sake of fairness, no one, including the Empress, was allowed to use magic to cheat. Except for the silly girl Wan Wan, which one of the women in Changle Palace tonight wasn't intelligent and quickly learned how to play. Thus, Changle Palace was filled with the sound of playing mahjong for the entire night. Li Mu, Lu Hanyan, Li Qing, and the Empress sat at a square table. Xiaobai moved a chair and sat behind Li Mu. Wan Wan ran over to take a look and quickly ran back to the table to eat a few mouthfuls. The night passed quickly. On the morning of the first day of the new year, after eating dumplings, Lu Hanyan and Li Qing were about to return. This time, their return to Shindu was a last-minute decision. Yuzenzi was still waiting for Lu Hanyan at Mount Baiyun. Li Qing also had to go back to continue her seclusion and strive to break through to the 5th realm as soon as possible. Li Mu asked the Dao Bell to escort them back. When they reached Mount Baiyun, it flew back by itself. On the morning of the first day of the new year, Li Mu and the Empress didn't idle around. Every year on the first day of the new year, there was a court assembly as usual. In addition to the officials of Shindu, the governors of the 36 counties also had to enter the palace on this day to report on their work. In addition, the Ministry of Rites also had to take the lead to hold the first ceremony of the new year. When all the procedures were completed, it was almost night. Next was a long holiday. From the first day of the first month to the 15th day of the new year, except for important government offices like the Ministry of Justice that needed officials to be on duty, most officials could enjoy half a month of holiday. Li Mu originally planned to take advantage of this holiday to return to Mount Baiyun. However, Li Qing was in seclusion, and Lu Hanyan was about to travel with Yuzenzi. After he returned to Mount Baiyun, there was a high possibility that he would be treated as a heartless talisman drawing machine by those old guys. After careful consideration, Li Mu dispelled this idea. Instead of being squeezed dry by those old guys, he would rather stay in Chengdu and be squeezed dry by the Empress. However, the Empress hadn't squeezed him dry recently. The government offices weren't open, and there were no reports to read. Li Mu's daily life was nothing more than playing mahjong, cultivating, and repairing the Dao bell. The cracks on the Dao bell were almost invisible to the naked eye, but if the bell grew larger, the cracks would still be very obvious. At present, Li Mu could use it as an offensive Dharma artifact, and it could also protect Li Mu. If he wanted to restore it to its original state and have the power to protect a mountain gate, he would have to wait for it to be completely repaired. However, Li Mu didn't have any new Dharma arts in his mind. Without Dharma arts that hadn't appeared in this world, he wouldn't be able to obtain the origin energy of heaven and earth. Li Mu didn't know of any other methods to obtain the origin energy of heaven and earth. He could only put this matter aside for the time being, and leave the Dao bell by his side for the time being. Even if he didn't have any new Dharma arts, the Dao bell would be able to repair itself within 10 years. Li Mu walked out of Changle Palace, patted the Dao bell on his shoulder, and said, "You can only stay by my side for a while longer?" The Dao bell buzzed in response. Li Mu suddenly looked ahead and saw a figure slowly walking toward Changle Palace. Judging from the figure, it seemed to be a woman. She was wearing a black cloak and a black bamboo hat, and her aura was obscure as she walked slowly to the entrance of Changle Palace. She looked at Li Mu, who was standing at the entrance of Changle Palace, and asked, "What's your name?" Li Mu sized her up and said, "Li Mu." The woman in black nodded slightly, and then asked, "Little Li, is Her Majesty in Changle Palace?" Chapter 398. Changle Palace. Li Mu already knew the identity of the woman in black. She was the commander of the Chrysanthemum Guards, the Orchid, Bamboo, and Chrysanthemum Guards. Li Mu had never seen her before. According to the title of Commander of the Internal Guards, Li Mu should call her Lady Chrysanthemum. The Chrysanthemum Guards were the Empress's external intelligence organization. They were responsible for monitoring the movements of the Ghost Realm, the Demon Nation, the Demon Sect, and other powerful enemies of the Great Zhou. It was said that many of the Chrysanthemum Guards had infiltrated these forces and were important spies for the imperial court. Zhou looked at the woman in black and asked, "You suddenly returned to Chengdu. Did the Demon Sect make a big move?" The woman in black glanced at Li Mu and said to Zhou, "Your Majesty, this is a matter of great importance. If it is not handled well, it will be a catastrophe for the Great Zhou and even the entire righteous path." Zhou understood her meaning and said, "He is one of us. If you can tell me something, you can also tell him." The woman in black didn't expect the Empress to trust a man so much, but she didn't dare to question the Empress. She looked away from Li Mu and said, "Your Majesty, the Demon Sect found the Demon Emperor White Emperor's cave." The Empress, who had always been indifferent, showed a serious expression when she heard this news. She asked, "Is the news true?" The woman in black nodded and said, "One of my spies risked exposing his identity to spread this news. The Demon Sect has been searching for the White Emperor's cave for hundreds of years. Recently, they made a major breakthrough and confirmed the approximate location of the White Emperor's cave." "What Demon Emperor White Emperor?" Li Mu was confused and couldn't help but ask, "Your Majesty, who is Demon Emperor White Emperor? What happened to his cave?" The woman in black looked at Li Mu and frowned. "Which commander do you work for? How can you be so unruly? Is this a place where you can interrupt?" Li Mu pursed his lips. If it wasn't for the Empress's serious expression, he wouldn't have interrupted even if she asked him to. He said to the Empress, "Your Majesty, Lady Chrysanthemum, and you have important matters to discuss. I will leave first." Zhou said, "Come back." Li Mu, "This is not the place for this subject to interrupt. This subject should leave first. Stop fooling around. Zhou rubbed her eyebrows helplessly. She looked at the woman in black and said, "When you see him in the future, treat him like you see me. Don't say those words again." The woman in black stared blankly at Li Mu. The shock in her heart could not be any greater. Had His Majesty's trust in this person reached such a level? After regaining her senses, she lowered her head and said in a deep voice, "Yes." Zhou looked at Li Mu again and explained, "Demon Emperor Bai Di was a powerful demon 3,000 years ago. His cultivation had reached the 9th realm. Today, most of the major demon clans' orthodoxies were passed down from him. Thus, he was respectfully called Demon Emperor by the demon clans. Although the Demon Emperor passed down the demon orthodoxies, he had no direct disciples. His lifespan ended, and after he died, no one inherited his cave abode. Bai Di, Demon Emperor, powerful demon. Li Mu still could not imagine how powerful he was with such words. It was only when the Empress mentioned the 9th realm that Li Mu realized that this demon was actually so powerful. In Li Mu's eyes, the 7th realm was already very powerful. The Empress could teleport, plant flowers, and even chase him into his dreams to beat him up. These were only the abilities of the 7th realm. How powerful would the legendary 9th realm be? But when he thought about how even someone as powerful as the 9th realm only had a lifespan of 300 years, Li Mu felt that it was not that interesting anymore. Powerful cultivators who could reverse yin and yang and mediate destiny would be embarrassed to tell others that they were immortal cultivators if they did not live for thousands of years. They had painstakingly cultivated to the 9th realm, but they had only lived less than 200 years longer than normal people. Moreover, the 300 years of their lives had been spent in boring cultivation. What was the point of cultivating here and there? The Empress continued, "It is said that in the Demon Emperor Bai Di's cave abode, there are many magic treasures and spirit herbs." Li Mu said in surprise, "No matter how good the quality of those magic treasures and spirit herbs are, after 3,000 years, they will lose all their spiritual qi and become ordinary objects, right?" The Empress nodded and said, "The magic treasures will be damaged, and the spirit herbs will lose their effectiveness. But even after 3,000 years, the Tao page will not change at all." Li Mu was shocked and said, "There is a Tao page in the Demon Emperor Bai Di's cave abode?" The Empress said, "This was not a secret at the time. It was because he comprehended part of the Tao page that he was able to pass down the teachings of the demon race. Later people guessed that the Tao page he had recorded the cultivation methods of the demon race in the world. In the current cultivation world, if there was any treasure that was the most precious, it would undoubtedly be the Tao page. Obtaining a Tao page would allow one to establish a sect and pass down their teachings. The 6 sects of Taoism and the various sects of the demon path all inherited their teachings from the Tao page. Over the past 10,000 years, even though the factions had been improving and innovating on the basis of the Tao pages and had made great progress, they had to admit that the cultivation world had only developed for a short period of time. It was still a long way from reaching the peak of the previous era. The scene Li Mu saw from the Fulu School's Tao page had already proved this point. The cultivation of this era was temporarily behind the previous era. The Tao page was at least an item from the previous era. In other words, obtaining the Tao page would allow one to obtain an even more powerful inheritance. He finally understood why Lady Ju and the Empress were so nervous. If this Tao page was obtained by the righteous path, it would be fine. But if it was obtained by the demon path's demon sect, it would be disastrous. The demon path's demon sect was different from ordinary demons. Among the demons, there were good and kind demons like Xiao Bai, Bai Yinxin, and Bai Tingxin. But there were also evil demons that fed on the essence and blood of humans. The demon path's demon sect was established by these fallen demons. If the demon path's demon sect obtained this Tao page and comprehended an even more powerful demon art from it, it would be a huge blow to the Great Zhou and the righteous path. The demon race originally had an innate advantage. If they obtained a more complete and higher-level cultivation method, they might be able to create a force that was not weaker than the 6 sects of Taoism within a few years. The black-clothed woman said solemnly, "Your Majesty, we must prevent the demon sect from obtaining the Tao page." Otherwise, it will lead to a disaster. Zhou nodded and said, I understand. This Tao page must not fall into the hands of the demon path. Li Mu thought for a moment and said, Your Majesty, why don't we let the 3 consecrators of the consecration department go? With their strength, it won't be a problem for them to sweep through the demon path's demon sect and obtain the Tao page. Zhou shook his head and said, They won't be able to enter Demon Emperor White Emperor's cave abode. Li Mu was puzzled. Why? Zhou explained, The reason why his cave abode has not been discovered for so many years is because this cave abode is a flask space that he created himself. An ownerless flask space is unstable. If cultivators above the 6th realm enter, the cave abode will immediately collapse. All living beings in the cave abode will be wiped out by the power of space. Li Mu was stunned. In other words, cultivators above the 6th realm could not enter White Emperor's cave abode at all? Without 6th realm cultivators, what was there to be afraid of? Li Mu looked at the Empress confidently and said, Don't worry, Your Majesty. I will definitely bring that Tao page back. The woman in black looked at the Empress and said in shock, Your Majesty? The Empress nodded and said, Let one of the high consecrators accompany you. If anything happens, he can take care of you. The woman in black was confused. 6th realm cultivators could not enter White Emperor's cave abode. In order to prevent the Tao page from falling into the hands of the demon path, shouldn't the imperial court send all the high consecrators below the 6th realm? Hearing Her Majesty's words, it seemed like she planned to let this person go alone. She had been undercover in the Yao nation for a year. After returning to the divine capital, she realized that her thoughts could not keep up with Her Majesty's. No, she had to ask Shangguanli what was going on. Not long after, at the entrance of Changle Palace, Shangguanli nodded and said, If he goes personally, you don't have to worry. The woman in black scratched her head and said in disbelief, Who is he? Why do you and Her Majesty trust him so much? In Changle Palace, Li Mu was still thinking. For a moment, he wanted to go to White Emperor's cave abode alone and take back that Tao page. However, after thinking about it carefully, that was still a bit reckless. Although he was confident in his own strength, he had to be careful on the path of cultivation. He could not underestimate others. If he failed miserably, he would die without even a chance to regret it. Moreover, the Yao sect had planned this for hundreds of years. If they did not send out all their elites for this operation, he might not be able to handle it alone. His beautiful life had just begun. Thinking of Lu Hanyan, Li Qing, Wanwan, Xiaobai, the Empress, he decided to play it safe. This time, he planned to bring all the high consecrators at the peak of the 5th realm with him. In addition, he also wanted to borrow some people from Fulu School to ensure that nothing went wrong. Li Mu took out a sound transmission talisman. After Lu Hanyan went to White Cloud Mountain, she would probably return this talisman to Xianjizi. He did not know what Xianjizi was busy with. Li Mu urged the talisman several times, but there was no response. White Cloud Mountain, main peak Taoist palace. 6 tall white jade chairs floated in the void. Fulu School's headmaster, Xianjizi, sat in the main seat. The other 5 chairs were occupied by 4 men and 1 woman. They were all phantoms. The only middle-aged woman said, Congratulations, fellow Taoist Xianjizi. You have gained a beloved disciple. I will prepare a generous gift for the disciple acceptance ceremony. A middle-aged man beside her said, I also want to congratulate fellow Taoist Yuzenzi for ascending to transcendence. Fulu School has gained another powerhouse. Xianjizi cupped his hands and said, Thank you, fellow Taoists. Then, as if he sensed something, he said to the crowd, Please wait for a moment. He stretched out his hand. A white light flashed in his palm, and a wooden box appeared. Xianjizi inserted his magic power and asked briefly, Junior brother, what's the matter? In Changle Palace, Li Mu contacted Xianjizi several times, but there was no response. Just as he was about to give up, Xianjizi's voice finally came from the wooden box. Li Mu cleared his throat and said, There is a very important matter. This matter concerns the foundation of Fulu School. The Imperial Court has received accurate news that the Demon Path's monster sect has discovered Monster Emperor White Emperor's cave abode. There is a Tao page in the cave abode. I have to get it and not let the Demon Path get it. Senior brother, remember to send a few peak manifestation realm elders over. Remember not to tell anyone about this. Monster Emperor White Emperor. Leave behind the cave abode. The Tao page. In the Tao Palace, the phantoms of the other 5 headmasters were stunned. Xian Jizi was extremely regretful. The matter of the Tao page was extremely important. He should have waited for these people's phantoms to dissipate before contacting Li Mu. In Changle Palace, Li Mu saw that Xian Jizi did not speak and frowned. Senior brother, this is a great opportunity to realize your dream of revitalizing Fulu School. Can you punch the South Sect, kick the North Sect, lead Xuanzong, make the Pill Cauldron and Spirit Array sects submit to you and become the head of the 6 Taoist sects? It all depends on this. Senior brother, say something. There was suddenly no sound from the voice transmission box. Li Mu turned it over and looked at it. He was puzzled. Strange. Why is there no sound? Is there no signal here? In the Tao Palace of the main peak of Baiyun Mountain, Xian Jizi looked at the unfriendly gazes of the 5 people, and an awkward expression appeared on his face. Fellow Taoist Xian Jizi, you really are a good headmaster of Fulu School. Fellow Taoist, you have big dreams. Humph. The other 5 headmasters looked at Xian Jizi and mocked him. Xian Jizi looked at them and suddenly waved his sleeves. A spiritual energy storm swept out, and the 5 primordial spirit phantoms were instantly blown away. Then, Xian Jizi stood up and said in a low voice, all 5th realm elders of the various peaks, come to the Tao Palace of the main peak to see me. His voice soon echoed throughout the entire White Cloud Mountain. Chapter 399. The sect master urgently summoned all the 5th realm elders. This was the first time such a thing had happened on Baiyun Mountain. For a moment, all the creation realm elders in the sect, whether they were writing talismans or cultivating in seclusion, immediately stopped what they were doing and left the various peaks to head to the main peak. At the same time, above the East Sea, in the Xuanzong Ancestral Court, there were dozens of streams of light flying towards the highest peak from several mountains that were hanging upside down in the air. In a certain country in the southwest of the ancestral state, in the ancestral court of the Pill Cauldron sect, all the creation realm elders in the sect had just been urgently summoned by the sect master. The South Sect, North Sect, and Spirit Array sect also did the same. For these 5 sects, Xian Jizi's dream was not worth mentioning. Which of the 6 Taoist sects did not want to unify Taoism? Everyone was polite on the surface, but in reality, everyone wanted to ride on the heads of others. In comparison, the Tao page that the Demon Emperor by D once possessed was the most important thing. Although what was recorded on that page might only be the cultivation methods of the Demon Clan, all methods were one, and the Great Path was the same. Human cultivators might be able to comprehend something from it. Taking a step back, even if the Tao page was useless to human cultivators, it was a supreme treasure to the demon race. Could even be said that whoever obtained the Tao page would obtain the demon race. Even if they could not obtain it, they could not let the demon path obtain it. Changle Palace. Li Mu and Xian Jizi were speechless for a long time after their second conversation. He originally wanted Xian Jizi to keep it a secret. Now, all the 6 Taoist sects knew that the Demon Path and the Demon Path had found clues to the White Emperor cave abode. These sects would definitely not stand by and watch. The competition suddenly increased by many times. Xian Jizi was old and the sect master. Li Mu had to give him some face and did not say anything. Although it was best for their own people to obtain the Tao page, it was more important that it did not fall into the hands of the Demon Path. If the 6 Taoist sects sent people to participate, the chances of snatching the Tao page from the Demon Path would be higher. There was no time to lose. In order to prevent the Demon Path from taking the initiative, Li Mu had to act immediately. Unfortunately, it was the Lantern Festival in 2 days. He had promised to accompany Xiao Bai and Wan Wan to the Lantern Festival, but now he had to break his promise. After making this decision as quickly as possible, Li Mu left the palace gates and strode toward the Department of Offerings. Life Continent, Country of Demons. In the 100,000 mountain range, the demons had their own territories. Every great demon had their own territory. Within their territories, they established their own kingdoms and called themselves kings. They recruited the demons and formed a powerful force. These forces had friction with each other, and occasionally, there would be annexation. Only those forces that were strong enough to intimidate others could survive for a long time. For example, the demon sect. The demon sect was not a country established by a certain demon race, and most of the members of the demon sect were not from the demon nation. Many of them had fled to the 100,000 mountain range after committing heinous crimes by feeding on human blood essence in the various countries in the ancestral state. The demon sect gathered these fallen demons together and formed a huge force. Even the top-ranked demon kings of the demon nation would not provoke them. This was because the demon sect was not only a single force, but also one of the 10 demon path sections. They had the support of the demon path behind them, allowing them to occupy a vast territory in the demon nation. The demon sect. Numerous mountain peaks were scattered all over the place. Each mountain peak was filled with dense demonic chi. Among them, demonic chi soared into the sky from several of the mountain peaks, piercing through the clouds. On the highest mountain peak, the pressure was extremely strong. Some of the lesser demons passing by would involuntarily lower their heads and feel panic in their hearts. On that mountain peak was the cave residence of the Grand Elder. The demon sect's Grand Elder was a late-stage core fragmentation expert. His strength was equivalent to a peak human cultivator in Dongxian. He was only one step away from stepping into the 7th realm and becoming a legendary spirit demon. On the mountain peak in the most spacious cave residence, a strong man was sitting on a tall chair. His voice was as loud as a bell as he asked, "How is it?" Another figure knelt down and said, "Great Elder, we are 100% sure that the Demon King's cave is there. However, the Demon King has passed away and no one knows where the entrance to the space is. It will take some time to find the entrance to the cave." The strong man said in a deep voice, "Take your time. We have waited for hundreds of years. There is no need to rush." The figure kneeling on the ground said, "Grand Elder, why don't you look for it yourself? With your strength, it shouldn't be difficult to find the entrance to the Demon King's cave residence, right?" The strong man looked at him indifferently and said, "What do you know? If I leave here, I will definitely attract the attention of some old fellows. Don't forget where this place is. Once the news is leaked, the entire demon nation will be shaken. At that time, it will be even harder for us to get that thing." The figure immediately said, "It's my men who are stupid." The strong man asked, "How is the lockdown?" The figure nodded and said, "Don't worry, Grand Elder. The people who know about this are all our trusted men. I guarantee that it will be airtight. As long as we find the entrance to the cave residence, we will be able to quietly get that thing. At that time, Grand Elder will unify the demon nation and become the king of demons. It will only be a matter of time." The strong man nodded and said, "It's fine as long as it's airtight." Just as he finished speaking, someone suddenly walked in quickly and said, "Grand Elder, His Highness King Qingguang is here to visit." The strong man frowned and asked suspiciously, "What is he here for?" This was a sensitive time when he was about to succeed. Any movement would make him suspicious. He would suspect that the other party was here for his White Emperor's cave residence. Soon, the strong man shook his head. He must be thinking too much. King Qingguang was far away in the ghost realm. How could he know his secret? He looked at the person and said, "Let him in." Ever since the Nether Saint died at the hands of the Empress of the Great Zhou, the Soul Sect had no leader. In order to stabilize the Soul Sect, several elders of the Sage Sect worked together to raise King Qingguang's strength to the 6th realm and promoted him to the new Grand Elder of the Soul Sect. In terms of status, this former junior of the Soul Sect was now on equal footing with him. Soon, the black-robed King Qingguang walked into the cave residence. He first cupped his hands to the strong man and said, "Greetings, Demon King." Although he was now the Grand Elder of the Soul Sect, The strength of the demon race and the soul sect could not be mentioned in the same breath. He was far from being a match for the Grand Elder of the demon sect. In front of him, King Qingguang still lowered his status slightly. The demon sect's Grand Elder Taoist priest said, "I haven't congratulated you on being promoted to the Grand Elder of the soul sect." King Qingguang said modestly, "It's all luck. I can't compare to the demon king." The two exchanged a few polite words. The demon sect's Grand Elder asked, "Why did you come to my demon nation instead of staying in the ghost realm?" King Qingguang said, "I heard that the demon king discovered the White Emperor's cave residence, so I came to take a look." Boom! The demon sect's Grand Elder's mind buzzed. He had already ordered everyone to keep this matter a secret. The entire matter was airtight. How did King Qingguang, who was far away in the ghost realm, know about it? Soon, his face regained its calm. He looked at King Qingguang and said in surprise, "Even I didn't know about this. How did you know about it?" King Qingguang looked at him with surprise and said slowly, "A head of the Pill Cauldron School and a dozen Fortune Realm elders have already entered the demon nation. According to the reports of our spies in various places, besides the Pill Cauldron School, the Fulu School, the Spirit Array School, the Southern School, the Northern School, and the Xuanzong have all made big movements. Their target seems to be the demon nation. The Great Zhou's consecrated department has been moving frequently recently. There must be some scheme. If they're not here for the White Emperor's cave residence, could it be that they're here to pacify the demon nation and eradicate the demon sect?" The demon sect's Grand Elder's face sank. After a long time, he took a deep breath and looked at a figure behind him. He gritted his teeth and said, "This is what you meant by airtight?" The demon cultivator fell to his knees with a thump, his body shaking like a sieve. How was this airtight? It was simply leaking air everywhere. At this moment, he also didn't know how this matter that was supposed to be top secret was suddenly known by everyone. Could it be that there was a traitor among them? P.S. This chapter is a little short. The reason is that I haven't finished writing the following plot. There are many ideas, but it's not easy to string them together and make them interesting. If the second update isn't up by 11:30, then it isn't. I'll update when the ideas are smoothed out. Chapter 400. Inside the cave, King Qingguang looked at the demon sect Grand Elder and said, "Demon King, this time, the 6 Taoist sects and the Great Zhou Court have all sent experts to the demon nation. We must determine the purpose of these people. If they really want to eradicate the demon sect and pacify the demon nation, we must immediately report back to the Sage sect and ask the elders to decide." The demon sect Grand Elder snorted and asked, "Do they have the guts?" Whether it was the righteous Tao, the demon Tao, or the Great Zhou Court, there was a certain tacit understanding between the three. The Great Zhou Court would never join forces with the 6 Taoist sects to attack a branch of the demon Tao unless they were prepared for the crazy revenge of the 10 demon Tao sects. At that time, the entire ancestral province would become a battlefield. The battle between super experts could render the 36 counties of the Great Zhou barren. If the Great Zhou Court lost, their nation would be destroyed. If the Great Zhou Court won, the 36 counties would become a land of death. The demon Tao might lose, but the righteous Tao and the Great Zhou Court would never win. They were not here to attack the demon sect. Without a doubt, their purpose in coming to the demon nation was the White Emperor's cave. King Qingguang looked at him and said, "So, the matter of the White Emperor's cave is true?" At this point, there was no use in hiding it. The demon sect Grand Elder said with a sullen face, "It's true." As his voice fell, another small demon ran in and said, "Grand Elder, the Sage sect elder sent a message." The news of the demon sect discovering the demon emperor White Emperor's cave quickly spread throughout the various demon nations. The demon sect discovered the location of the White Emperor's cave. They sent people into the White Emperor's cave. The demon sect Grand Elder obtained that page of the Heavenly Book. The demon sect Grand Elder comprehended the Heavenly Book and is about to unify the demon nation. At first, the demons thought that the news was fake. However, as the rumors became more and more true, some powerful demons could not sit still. Blackwind Nation. A burly man with a face full of black hair and a pair of large ears had a glint in his eyes. He gritted his teeth and said, "No, we can't let the demon sect obtain this page of the heavenly book. Otherwise, they will cause chaos in our demon kingdom. Send someone to find out what's going on." In a certain mountain range in the demon nation, there was a mountain peak that resembled a wolf's head. At the mouth of the wolf there was a deep cave. It was pitch black inside the cave, with only a few balls of flame flickering. Only when he got closer did he realize that these were not ghostly flames at all, but pairs of ghostly green eyes. A gray wolf ran into the cave from the outside. Soon, a conversation could be heard from inside the cave. The demon race's heavenly tomes cannot fall into the hands of outsiders. Third brother is right. No matter if it's the humans or the demon sect, we cannot let them obtain the demon emperor's heavenly book. With our strength, I'm afraid we're no match for the Taoist sect, the diabolical sect, and the great Zhou court. Let's discuss this with that snake and that big cat. This time we have to work together. In the demon nation, above the lush mountain range, several figures flew past at high speed. Other than the two high reverends of the worship department and the sloppy Taoist priest, there were 5 reverends at the peak of the manifestation realm beside Li Mu. For the sake of this plan, all the elites of the worship department had been mobilized. Among them, the 5 reverends at the peak of the 5th realm had entered the White Emperor's cave abode with Li Mu. The sloppy Taoist priest and the 2 high reverends were there to protect their safety. The demon nation was not the Great Zhou. There were countless great demons in it, and it was also the lair of the diabolical sect and the demon sect. Danger lurked in every corner. Whether or not they could obtain the treasure was one matter, and whether or not they could leave this place safely after obtaining the treasure was another matter. Within the demon nation, there were many towering mountains and steep ridges, and very few plains. As he flew over, Li Mu could feel the soaring demon chi from many of the mountain peaks. Among them, there were many 4th and 5th realm demons. There were even 1 or 2 6th realm demons. In the Great Zhou, 5th realm demons could be called demon kings, and 6th realm demons could be called demon emperors. But here, only 6th realm great demons could be called demon kings. As for demon emperors, it was an honorific that belonged to only one person. Demon Emperor Bai Di was a powerful demon from 3,000 years ago. Before Bai Di, most demons did not know how to cultivate. They relied on their instincts to breathe in spirit chi. Although it was not difficult for such a primitive cultivation method to give birth to spiritual intelligence, it was extremely difficult for powerful cultivators to appear. Bai Di was the first 9th realm great demon. Not only was his own cultivation extraordinary, but he also passed down cultivation methods to many demons. After Bai Di, the demons obtained cultivation methods and began to rise rapidly. They even established the demon nation and ruled separately from the human race until now. It was said that Bai Di only passed down the basic cultivation methods of the demons. The true great supernatural power of the demons still existed in the heavenly book in Bai Di's hands. As long as one could obtain the heavenly book, they would be able to grasp the supreme cultivation secrets of the demons. The Tao scripture of the Taoist sect was called the Heavenly Book by the demons. Others might have other names, but in the eyes of the Taoist sect, no matter if it was the demon Tao, the ghost Tao, the demon Tao, or the Buddhist Tao, they were all Taos. There was nothing wrong with calling it the Tao scripture. Li Mu and the others swaggered across the sky, encountering quite a number of demons blocking their way. However, when they saw the formation of the group, they fled far away without even thinking about it. Later, Li Mu simply asked the 2 high priests to release their auras. Since then, no more demons dared to jump out. Although they were few in number, only 9, these 9 people could destroy most of the demon nations here. Li Mu took out a compass and looked at the needle on the compass. It pointed to a mountain peak on the left and said, "There." The group flew another 50 miles to the left and landed on a mountain peak. On the open space on the mountain peak, Hyun Jinko walked over with a smile and said, "Junior brother, you're finally here." The few figures behind him also walked forward and bowed. "Greetings, Martial Uncle Ling Jizi." Mount Baiyun was closer to the demon nation, so the people from Fulu School had arrived earlier than Li Mu. However, they did not know the exact location and could only wait for Li Mu to arrive first. No need for formalities. Li Mu waved at the elders and looked to the side, saying, Taoist Miao Dun is also here. Hyun Jinko revealed a helpless expression. Although the other 5 sects knew about the White Emperor's cave abode, only Li Mu knew its exact location. Even if they arrived at the Demon Nation, they could only look around like headless flies. Never in his wildest dreams did he expect to meet people from the profound sect here. After Xuanzong's Miao Dun saw them, she insisted on traveling with them. He could not shake her off no matter how hard he tried. In the end, he could only give up. A middle-aged Taoist nun holding a horsetail whisk walked over and smiled at Li Mu, saying, Long time no see. Fellow Taoist, you're not the same as before. When she first met Li Mu, he was still a lowly constable in Yangqiu County with a weak cultivation. After more than a year, he had already advanced to the fortune realm and became a second-generation disciple of Fulu school. His status was the same as hers. Li Mu smiled and said, Taoist Miao Dun is still as elegant as ever. The middle-aged Taoist nun smiled and said, Fellow Taoist, you're also looking for the White Emperor's cave abode, right? Why don't we go together? There was only one Tao page. One more person meant one more competitor. However, Taoist Miao Dun had done a lot to kill Qin Huan. Now that she had taken the initiative to ask, Li Mu could not refuse. He nodded and said, That's good. Taoist Miao Dun glanced at Hyun Jinko and said, Your junior brother is much stronger than you. Hyun Jinko shook his head and said, Since junior brother says so, let's go. After all, Li Mu was still the main person in charge of this matter. Xuanzong and Fulu School, although one was in the east and the other in the north, they were both in the Great Zhou. Their relationship was closer than the other sects, so he could not keep refusing. Li Mu was convinced by Zhu Wei's ability to gather information. Apart from bringing news of the White Emperor's cave abode, she also gave Li Mu the specific location. After meeting up with Hyun Jinko and the others, the group of nearly 20 people quickly flew towards the heart of the Yao Kingdom. 2 hours later, the group arrived in the sky above a valley. The slovenly Taoist priest suddenly said, Stop! The next moment, he rolled up his sleeves and said, Retreat! Almost instantly, the 2 high priests Hyun Jinko and Miao Dun reacted. They each took a few people and retreated out of the valley. Several powerful attacks came from all directions of the valley. The space where Li Mu and the others were just now fluctuated violently. Just the aftermath alone was enough to flatten the surrounding mountains. If Li Mu and the others were still in their original positions, the high priests and the 5th realm elders of Fulu School and Xuanzong would probably be instantly destroyed. The Dongxian experts would also be seriously injured. The next moment, 4 powerful auras rose from the valley. One of them was emitting a ghostly aura. He was slightly weaker than the Nether Saint, but he was still a 6th realm expert. The other person was a muscular man. His demonic aura soared into the sky. His aura was also very terrifying. Li Mu sensed that he seemed to be even stronger than Hyun Jinko. As for the other 2, one was an unusually handsome man. The other was shrouded in a cloud of fog. His face could not be seen, but from their auras, these 2 were undoubtedly 6th realm experts. Hyun Jinko looked at the muscular man with a serious expression. He said, Demon Sect Grand Elder. The man looked at the group with a fierce gaze. His voice was loud as a bell. He said sternly, This is not a place where you can come. Go back to where you came from. The slovenly Taoist priest crossed his arms and said disdainfully, Little cat, what are you being so arrogant for? There are only 4 of you and 5 of us. Why don't we fight? Whoever loses can get lost. The 4 6th realms on the other side were undoubtedly from the Devil Sect. Judging from their characteristics, they should be from the Soul Sect, the Demon Sect, the Mirage Sect, and the Maison Sect respectively. It was obvious that the Devil Sect had attached great importance to the Demon Emperor's cave residence this time. While the 2 sides were in a stalemate, Li Mu suddenly felt a gaze from the opposite side fall on him. He looked across and saw a few figures standing behind the handsome man. One of them was a woman who was glaring at him with a ferocious look in her eyes. It was as if she wanted nothing more than to skin him alive. Chapter 401. Seeing Phantom Princess, Li Mu recalled the rope that the Empress had given him. Then, he recalled some scenes that were not suitable for children. If it wasn't for that teleportation talisman, this demon would have become Li Mu's captive. Now, the two short swords that he had seized from her were still in Li Mu's storage space. Sensing Li Mu's unscrupulous gaze, Phantom Princess also recalled some past events, and the viciousness in her eyes intensified. Opposite him, the demon sect's Grand Elder looked at the 5 powerhouses opposite him with an ugly expression. Just as the Taoist priest had said, in terms of the number of powerhouses, his side was at a disadvantage. Not only that, he couldn't see through the Taoist priest's strength at all. Even if his cultivation hadn't reached the 7th realm, he should be at the edge of that realm. They didn't have the advantage in numbers, and their strength was also slightly inferior. They were at an absolute disadvantage. However, he wouldn't give up on the Demon Emperor's cave abode and the things inside no matter what. Li Mu's side didn't retreat, and the demon sect's side didn't budge either. Just as both sides were in a deadlock, another 4 auras rapidly approached from afar. 4 demonic auras shot into the sky, and the demon sect's Grand Elder's expression darkened even more. The White Emperor's cave abode should have belonged to him alone, but some damn traitor leaked the news. Not only did it attract the attention of the Great Zhou Court and the 6 Taoist sects, but even the other great demons of the demon nation couldn't sit still. He looked at the 4 figures rapidly approaching and said coldly, "Snake King, Panther King, Bear King, Wolf King, what are you doing here?" Among the 4 figures that had just arrived, a slender man with a feminine face said, "The Demon Emperor is the Emperor of the demon race, not the Emperor of the tiger race. Does the Tiger King want to monopolize it?" The demon sect's Grand Elder's true form was a tiger demon. He looked at the Snake King and said coldly, "We have enough evidence to prove that the Demon Emperor's true form belongs to the tiger race. What does his cave abode have to do with you?" The Snake King said indifferently, "I still have proof. The Demon Emperor is an ancestor of my snake clan. His cave abode and everything in it should be inherited by us." Seeing that they were about to quarrel with the Demon Kings again, the handsome man from the demon sect said, "For Demon Kings? No matter what, the Demon Emperor's cave abode should belong to the demon race. It has nothing to do with humans. Why don't you join forces with the demon sect and chase away those people from the Great Zhou Court and Tao sect? Then, the demon race will decide who the cave abode belongs to." The 4 monster kings looked at each other, seemingly deep in thought. Li Mu frowned slightly. If the demon race and the demon sect joined forces, the number of 6th realm cultivators on the other side would immediately double. 8 against 5, they were at a disadvantage. Li Mu decisively looked at Hyun Jinko and asked, "Senior brother, can you contact the other 4 sects?" Hyun Jinko immediately understood what Li Mu meant. He took out a bronze mirror and said telepathically, "Jade Sun, 2 heaven-grade pills, and I'll tell you the location of the White the Arch cave abode." The other party did not hesitate for long and immediately said, "Deal." Hyun Jinko changed his hand seals and sent them into the bronze mirror. He said again, "Guanjiwanzi, 2 heaven-grade array flags, and I'll tell you the location of the White the Arch cave abode." The person in the mirror said in a low voice, "Deal." Hyun Jinko held the mirror in one hand and changed hand seals with the other. White light was sent into the mirror repeatedly. "Ling Wuxia, 100 bottles of spirit fluid, and I'll tell you where the White the Arch cave abode is. 50 bottles, no less. If you don't agree, I'll look for Dong Yunzi." "It's good that you agree. 50 bottles of spirit fluid in exchange for a chance to obtain the Tao page. You guys don't lose out. Dong Yunzi, 2 heaven-grade magic treasures in exchange for the location of the White the Arch cave abode. Dan Qingzi and the rest have all agreed. You're the only one left." "What? One? Come over quickly." Li Mu looked at Hyun Jinko in a daze. In his eyes, Hyun Jinko had always been an honest person with thick eyebrows and big eyes. Li Mu and Lu Hanyen had become disciples. He was the one who had been exploited the most by Yuzhen and Fu Daozi. He had been extorted of a lot of treasures, but he did not complain at all. He was so honest that it was embarrassing. He was completely not as shrewd as he was just now. Li Mu was dumbfounded when he heard the news and did for business deals. Sensing Li Mu's gaze, Hyun Jinko said embarrassedly, "It's almost time for Senior Brother Sect Master's disciple recruitment ceremony." "I understand." Li Mu nodded embarrassedly and said, "I understand. I understand." First, it was Lu Hanyen. Then it was Li Mu. The couple had already emptied Hyun Jinko. Until now, Li Mu was too embarrassed to take out the Qingxian sword in front of him. Now it was Li Qing's turn. He probably really did not have anything that he could take out. That was why he wanted to take this opportunity to extort a wave of money. By extorting 4 sects at the same time, other than giving Li Qing a meeting gift, he also made a lot of profit. Li Mu was truly somewhat guilty. Their family had forced an honest person to become a treacherous person. Opposite them, the eyes of the 4 demon kings flickered. Although the demon sect did not have good intentions, they definitely did not want the treasures of the demon race to be obtained by humans. Joining forces to chase them away first before fighting with the demon sect was the best decision. However, before they could respond, a sudden change occurred. The sky in front suddenly lit up. In the void, a golden door appeared out of nowhere. Several figures walked out of the door. The aura of the leader was obscure. He was obviously a 6th realm cultivator. The few people behind him also had the aura of a peak 5th realm cultivator. Li Mu looked at the golden door. From that position, he could feel the fluctuations of an array formation. They had directly built a teleportation array formation. The appearance of the spirit array sect was indeed extraordinary. Among the 4 sects, they were the first to arrive. Then, a few more figures shot over from afar and arrived in an instant. A woman in a white robe and a few other figures appeared in everyone's line of sight. These people were all women. As they approached, Li Mu suddenly caught a whiff of a fragrant scent. This fragrance did not smell like the body fragrance of a woman. It was more like the fragrance of an elixir. Moreover, it was the fragrance of a supreme-grade elixir. Li Mu could not help but swallow a mouthful of saliva. For cultivators, this fragrance was really too alluring. Without a doubt, these people were the powerful cultivators of the Elixir Cauldron sect. Then, a few more figures descended from the sky. These people were all men. They wore Taoist robes, but they did not look elegant at all. Because their bodies were too strong, Li Mu could see the lines of their muscles through the Taoist robes. The disciples of the South sect began to temper their bodies before they started cultivating. They specialized in the martial Tao. The strength of their bodies was comparable to Dharma treasures. The moment the disciples of the South sect appeared, Li Mu heard the sound of wind. He looked up and saw a black dot appear in the distant sky. The black dot enlarged quickly. A gigantic sword that was 1,000 feet long appeared in front of everyone's eyes. A few figures stood at the tip of the gigantic sword. After flying to the top of the valley, the people standing on the giant sword jumped down. Then, the gigantic sword began to shrink rapidly. In the end, it shrunk to its normal size and was carried on the back of a middle-aged man with a cultivation of the 6th realm. Li Mu noticed that the Taoist robes of the people beside the middle-aged man were flowing with light. They seemed to be of extraordinary quality. The weapons in their hands also looked extraordinary. Looking at their outfits and then looking at the disciples of the Fulu school, it was like comparing an emperor to a beggar. The North sect specialized in refining weapons. Among the 6 Taoist sects, it was the most extravagant sect. At this point, the 6 Taoist sects had gathered. The middle-aged man from the North sect looked around and looked at Hyun Jinko. He said angrily, "Hyun Jinko, didn't you say that you would only tell us this news?" The muscular man from the South sect did not look good either. He said the same thing to me. The woman from the Pill Cauldron sect looked at Hyun Jinko unhappily. She said, "Senior brother Hyun Jinko, you said that you would only tell little sister. You didn't keep your word." From the Spirit Array sect, Guang Yuanzi snorted coldly. He said, You didn't keep your word first. We can only give you one set of heaven-grade array flags. Hyun Jinko coughed softly and said, Let's not rush this matter. Opening the Demon Emperor's cave abode and getting the Tao page is more important. Although everyone's expression was still somewhat displeased, they did not speak again. The 6 Taoist sects usually liked to fight for disciples and organize all kinds of competitions between disciples to see who was better. They also dreamed of one day riding on the heads of the other 5 sections. However, at the end of the day they were still fellow sect members. Even if they were from different sects, they would still address each other as senior brother and senior sister. At this moment, they were united against the outside world. It was a tacit understanding that did not even need to be mentioned opposite them. The demon sect Grand Elder's expression was already indescribably ugly. The 6 Taoist sects and the Great Zhou Court already had 9 Sixth Realm experts on their side. On their side, even if the 4 demon kings were all on their side, they only had 8 Sixth Realm experts. Not to mention, the actual combat strength of the first seat of the 6 Taoist sects could not be measured by experts of the same level. If they really fought, their side would undoubtedly suffer a crushing defeat. Originally, it was his treasure trove alone. Now, it had attracted more than 10 major factions to fight for it. Just the 6th Realm experts alone numbered 16, and that was not counting himself. At the thought of this, he hated the spy who leaked the news even more. However, the spy seemed to have vanished from the face of the earth. No matter how he searched or calculated, he could not find any trace of the spy. After the people from the other 4 sects arrived, the atmosphere became awkward once more. Although the 6 Taoist sects and the Great Zhou Court were the strongest among the factions, no matter whether they wanted to make a move against the demon sect or the 4 demon kings, the other factions would not stand by and watch. If they really fought, neither side would gain any advantage. The slovenly Taoist priest looked at the demon sect Grand Elder and asked, Little Tabby Cat, what do you say now? The demon sect Grand Elder remained silent. It was impossible for him to monopolize the Demon Emperor's cave abode. However, he was also unwilling to give it up. The demon sect had searched for that cave abode for several generations of elders, spanning hundreds of years. How could he let others obtain it? At this moment, the Snake King spoke. Now that things have come to this, I'm sure everyone will be unwilling to leave and stay. Why don't everyone rely on their own abilities? After entering the Demon Emperor's cave abode, the heavenly book will belong to whoever obtains it. Chapter 402. What the Snake King said was a solution within a solution. There were 3 major factions and more than 10 smaller factions. If no one gave in, then no one could enter the Demon Emperor's cave abode. Instead of continuing the stalemate, it was better to put aside the dispute and participate together. As for who could obtain that page of the heavenly book, it would depend on their own abilities. Even if they couldn't obtain it, they could only blame themselves for being inferior. After the Snake King made his suggestion, the sloppy Taoist priest looked at Li Mu. Li Mu nodded slightly. It was impossible to monopolize the Demon Emperor's cave abode now. If they competed fairly, they had a high chance of winning. It wasn't unacceptable. The sloppy Taoist priest said, We agree. You can ask that little tabby cat if it agrees. The Demon Grand Elder didn't agree, but he didn't reject either. It was a tacit agreement. There were so many powerhouses here. His opinion wasn't important. Seeing that no one objected, the Snake King continued. After the Demon Emperor died, the cave abode has no owner. Those above the 6th realm cannot enter, so we can only send in our subordinates. For the sake of fairness, including us, no matter if it's the Great Zhou Court, the 6 Taoist sects, or the various Demon Tao sects, each faction can only send in 5 subordinates below the 6th realm. Does anyone have a different opinion? The Snake King's words were fair. No one raised any objections. Including Li Mu, there were a total of 6 5th realm consecrators in the imperial court. One of them had to stay outside. Only 5 of the elders brought by the 6 sects could enter. Very quickly, they decided on the candidates. The 4 Demon Tao sects and the Demon Kings also chose their strongest subordinates. For now, the 3 factions reached a temporary compromise. The next problem was to enter the Demon Emperor's cave abode. If there were only a few 6th realm powerhouses in the valley, they would have to put in a lot of effort to find the entrance. However, there were a total of 17 6th realm powerhouses here. Under the influence of benefits, the 17 of them joined forces to cast spells. Their magic power focused on a point in the void. A hole was immediately torn in that space. One could vaguely see that it was connected to another space. The Snake King said in a low voice, "Go in quickly. We can't hold it for long." The 5 shadows behind him were the first to fly into the crack. Then, the subordinates of the other 3 demon kings also jumped in. Following them were the people from the 4 demonic sections. Seeing Huanji and the others fly in, Li Mu, the other 4 consecrators, and the 5 elders of the Fulu school also flew in. In the valley, more than 10 people withdrew their spells. The spatial entrance also disappeared, and the sky returned to normal. The 3 forces stood in 3 different places, each on guard against the other. If we move together, we can take care of each other. The Demon Emperor's cave was very different from what Li Mu had imagined. It was all white and there was no sense of direction. They did not know how big this space was and where should they find the Tao page. Could it be that they had to search around like headless flies? At this time, the leading elder of the Fulu school took out a piece of Fulu from his sleeve and handed it to Li Mu, saying, "The sect master asked me to give this to Martial Uncle. He said that this piece of Fulu will lead us to the location of the Tao page. Why didn't you say so earlier?" Li Mu glanced at him, took the piece of Fulu, and threw it into the air. The piece of Fulu turned into a paper crane and slowly flapped its wings, flying to the left. Li Mu and the others followed the paper crane. While being vigilant of their surroundings, they slowly moved forward. In the thick fog not far ahead, an elder of the North sect took out a compass from his chest. After inserting his Fa Li, the compass needle spun rapidly and stopped after a while. At this time, the compass needle was pointing in the same direction as Li Mu and the others. In another direction, the 5 people of the Spirit Array sect followed behind a small flag in the air and silently moved forward. Although the elders of the 6 sects were separated and did not travel in the same direction, if they were to extend their route, they would find that sooner or later, they would meet at a certain place at the same time. The 10 people of the Meizong sect and the Mirage sect, under the guidance of Huanji, were still heading in the same direction. Li Mu slowly walked in the thick fog. Besides the footsteps of a group of people, he could not hear anything else. Dead silence. All he could feel in this space was a deathly stillness. There were no living creatures here. The ground was bare. Not to mention trees, there was not even a blade of grass or a flower. Other than the lack of living creatures, there was no spiritual energy in this space. This also meant that the Fa Li in their body could only be replenished with spiritual jades. Once the Fa Li in their body was depleted, the spiritual jades would also be used up. A cultivator at the peak of the 5th level would not be much stronger than a normal person. In this situation, all the sense of security that a cultivator had came from the Fa Li in their body. Li Mu reminded, "Everyone, be careful. Try to conserve your Fa Li as much as possible and avoid any unnecessary consumption of Fa Li." At this time, a consecrator of the imperial court who was leading the way suddenly stopped and said, "Lord Li, there is something in front." Li Mu took 2 steps forward. Indeed, in the thick fog ahead, he saw a black shadow. The black shadow was half the height of a person. It was squarish and motionless. It did not look like a living thing. Li Mu took a closer look and realized that it was a stone tablet. Chapter 403. Crunch. The handsome man had lost a leg. The sound of bones being chewed came from the ground. This made everyone, including Huanji, feel their hair stand on end. The Meizong and Mirage sect were mostly humans. They were different from the beasts that like to eat raw food. When had they ever seen such a bloody scene? Soon, the sound of bones being chewed stopped. A skinny figure jumped out from the ground. It was a humanoid creature that looked more like an ape. Its body was only covered with skin and bones. There was nothing in its two empty eye sockets. Its withered hair was stuck to its head. The corner of its mouth was full of blood and minced meat. It looked quite terrifying. Huan Ji said with a pale face, "Demonic corpse. It has been thousands of years. How can there still be demonic corpses here?" The ape corpse emitted a thick corpse aura. It let out a roar and pounced towards Huan Ji. In another place, a fifth-level core formation demonic bear of the bear tribe covered his bloody broken arm. He looked at the black shadow that was biting his arm in the fog. He felt a chill in his heart. Although it was also a demonic creature, it had never been so cruel. It was different from those wild demonic bears. Its parents were demonic beasts. It was born with intelligence. It ate cooked meat and drank fruit juice. The thick smell of blood made him feel nauseous. At this time, the black shadow had finished biting his arm and pounced towards him from the fog. 100 steps behind him, several people from the demonic Dao and demon sect were attacking a demonic corpse that came out from the ground. In other places, the elders of the 6 Dao sects were also in a similar situation. A female elder of the Pill Cauldron sect looked at the wolf corpse that was pouncing towards her. She waved her hand and threw a pill into the wolf corpse's mouth. Sizzle, green smoke came out of the wolf corpse's mouth. Soon, its entire body turned into a pile of powder. In another place, a bear corpse was pouncing towards the elder of the South sect. It was punched in the head and the bear corpse's head exploded. At almost the same time, a leopard corpse was killed by the sword array of the spirit array sect. At the place where Xuanzong was, lightning suddenly struck down from the fog and killed the 2 black shadows. On the northern sect side, a demonic corpse stretched out its sharp claws and stabbed at a northern sect elder. With a few crisp sounds, its claws broke. At the same time, its head was easily cut off by the northern sect elder's sword. Somewhere in the cave dwelling, Li Mu watched as the 2 monster corpses turned to ashes beneath the Fulu, a thoughtful expression on his face. Why would there be a strange demon corpse here? Although zombies lived longer than most races, it was impossible for them to live for more than 3,000 years. From the moment a corpse gained sentience, it had to re-enter the cycle of life and death. Furthermore, these demonic corpses looked extremely strange. Their strength was obviously not weak, and they were not weaker than a 4th realm flying stiff. However, they did not possess the simple intelligence of a flying stiff. Under normal circumstances, this was impossible, unless they were strong cultivators above the 5th realm before they died. The strength of a strong cultivator's corpse would naturally be extraordinary. They had existed in the form of corpses in this cave dwelling for as long as 3,000 years. Perhaps the entrance of Li Mu and the others had stimulated them, causing them to mutate. This was the only reason that could explain why there were demon corpses that had lived for 3,000 years. Although these corpses were very old, they had only mutated for a short period of time. If the corpses buried under these stone tablets were the corpses of strong cultivators from the demon clan from 3,000 years ago, and because of the influx of living people the process of mutating had accelerated, then Li Mu looked at the other stone tablets. Indeed, he saw that all the surrounding stone tablets had begun to shake violently. He looked at the people around him and said in a low voice, "This place is strange. Everyone be careful underground." Black shadows broke out from the ground under the stone steel. The thick corpse aura mixed with the smell of decay seemed to have diluted the surrounding fog a little. A Fulu school elder frowned and said, "Why are there so many demon corpses in the Demon Emperor's cave dwelling?" Li Mu shook his head and said, "Don't worry about that. Let's get rid of them first. Otherwise, more and more of them will gather. If we can use the Fulu, try not to exhaust your own mana." "Yes." Hearing this, the Fulu school disciples and the high priests of the imperial court all launched their Fulu attacks. The demon corpses in front of them had to be destroyed. Otherwise, they would be in a dilemma. Fortunately, these demon corpses only had strength but no intelligence. It was very easy to get rid of them. The group continued to move forward at a slow pace. In the process of moving forward, Li Mu also noticed that the fog around them was tumbling and sending waves of mana waves. Obviously, the others here were also fighting with the demon corpses. Li Mu carefully observed these demon corpses. A mystery gradually emerged in his heart. From the strength of these demon corpses, their masters should have been strong cultivators of the demon clan when they were alive. If these strong cultivators died in an accident, then their corpses would most likely not be left behind. Under normal circumstances, only when one's lifespan was exhausted would there be corpses left behind. But from the appearance of these demon corpses, they did not die because their lifespan was exhausted. These demon corpses had strong bodies. Most of them were still in the prime of their lives. They were at the peak of their strength. How could they all die in one place? Li Mu looked at the demon corpses that were still surging out. A thought suddenly arose in his mind. Could it be that they were all buried with the White Emperor? After the demon emperor White Emperor died, the demon soldiers and demon generals under his command were buried with him. This was the only possibility that could explain why there were so many tombstones neatly arranged here. As Li Mu was thinking about this, he heard the voices of the high priests and elders. The Fu Lu is all used up. Mine is also all used up. Why are there so many demon corpses here? This cave abode had been isolated from the outside world for 3,000 years. There was no supply of spiritual qi. After the Fu Lu was used up, they could only use their mana. Any wise cultivator would not use up all their magic power when they could not replenish their magic power and when the crisis was not over. This was no different from courting death. Li Mu took out all the spiritual jades and Fu Lu from his flask heaven space and distributed them to everyone. He said, "Everyone use the Fu Lu first. After the Fu Lu is used up, then use your mana. Remember to use the spiritual jades to replenish your mana at all times." Looking at his flask heaven ring, and then looking at the flask heaven cave abode of others, Li Mu finally understood the difference between them. The storage ring that the White Demon King gave him was only the size of a room. It was cramped for one person to live in. The Demon Emperor White Emperor's cave abode could no longer be described as a villa or a mansion. This was the real flask heaven world. In the blink of an eye, another demon corpse emerged from under a stone tablet. Li Mu casually struck it with a thunder talisman, turning it into ashes. The few of them followed the guidance of the paper crane and continued forward. God knows how many demon corpses they killed. Although the further they went, the fewer stone tablets and demon corpses there were, the stronger the demon corpses they encountered were. From early stage level 4 to mid-stage level 4 to late stage level 5 demon corpses just now. After death, the demon corpses had the power of early stage level 5 demon corpses. That meant that the owner of the demon corpses was at least level 6 when they were alive. In today's world, level 6 demon corpses were considered powerful existences. To think that they could be buried with others. This really overturned Li Mu's understanding of the world. The good thing was that there were not many demon corpses of this level. Furthermore, they did not have spiritual intelligence and were much weaker than cultivators of the same level. Even so, along the way, the group had used up most of their Fu Lu and spiritual jades. Before entering the White Emperor's cave abode, no one would have thought that the first part of the journey would be so difficult. Only when there were no more stone tablets around them and no more demon corpses jumping out did the group realize that they had arrived at a vast square. What they were stepping on was no longer earth, but crystal-clear spiritual jades. However, the spiritual jades laid on the ground did not have any spiritual qi. If the spiritual qi in the spiritual jades was absorbed by cultivators at an accelerated rate, the entire spiritual jade would turn into dust the moment the spiritual qi was exhausted. Only when the spiritual qi was allowed to slowly dissipate could it form a complete spiritual jade stone. It was not hard to imagine that the spiritual jades laid here 3,000 years ago should still contain spiritual qi. However, as time passed, the spiritual qi in the spiritual jades had all dissipated. Spiritual jades were items that gathered spiritual qi from the outside world. However, when there was no spiritual qi in the outside world, the spiritual qi in the spiritual jade could not be retained and would gradually dissipate outside. However, this dissipation speed was extremely slow. It would take hundreds to thousands of years for the spiritual qi in a spiritual jade to dissipate completely. These spiritual jades without spiritual qi also showed that this place had been through a long period of time. The fog in the square was much thinner than outside the square. The group could already see the situation 100 steps away. In a certain direction, the fog rolled and several figures walked out. Huan Ji's group of 10 people seemed to be in a sorry state. Their faces were all pale, and their bodies were covered with injuries. One of the handsome men had even lost a leg, and he looked rather miserable. Huan Ji did not expect Li Mu to arrive here before them. After her expression changed slightly, she maintained a certain distance from them and sat cross-legged on the ground. She took out 2 spiritual jades and held them in her hands as she meditated. Not long after, more figures walked out from the fog. After Xuanzong's group of 5 walked to the square, they smiled at Li Mu and the others. They also found a place and held spiritual jades in their hands to recover their spiritual qi. Shortly after, the elders of the South Sect, North Sect, Pill Cauldron Sect, and Spirit Array Sect also arrived at the square. Following closely behind them were the Ghost Sect and the Demon Sect. 5 people from the Demon Sect entered, but only 4 arrived. Among them, 1 had a broken arm and 1 had a broken leg. Although the Ghost Sect did not have fewer people, their bodies were much more illusory than when they entered. One of them was at the 5th realm when they entered, but when he arrived, his aura was only at the 4th realm. The last to arrive were the subordinates of the 4 demon kings. Of the 5 subordinates of the Snake King, only 4 were left. Of the 5 subordinates of the Bear King, 1 had a broken arm, 1 had a deep wound on his chest, and the other 3 were covered in wounds. The blood that seeped out of their wounds was black. Of the 5 subordinates of the Panther King and the Wolf King, only 3 were left. Just this short distance was enough to see the difference in strength between the various factions. When the 6 sects of the Dao sect passed through the land of demon corpses, they did not suffer any losses at all. The Fiend sects only lost 1 demon while the 4 demon kings suffered heavy losses. Unknowingly, the fog in the square dissipated a little. Everyone's gazes were focused ahead. In the thin fog, an incomparably majestic palace stood in the middle of the square. Chapter 404. Only now did everyone realize that they were in a square in front of a palace. Huan Ji looked at the palace and muttered, "Demon Emperor Palace?" Above Li Mu's head, the paper crane flapped its wings and slowly flew towards the palace, finally landing on the stone steps in front of the palace. All the Dao pages in this world came from the Dao scripture. The Fulu that Shenjizi gave him contained the aura of the Dao pages and could sense the location of the other Dao pages. Obviously, the Dao page that Demon Emperor Bai Di once had was in this palace. The compass in the hands of an elder of the northern sect trembled a few times and pointed towards the palace. The people of the demon sect, as well as the subordinates of the various demon kings, looked at the palace shrouded in mist, a strange light flashing in their eyes. Everyone knew very well that their target this time was inside the palace. But no one acted rashly. In the short time that they had walked to the square, they had already suffered heavy losses. Who knew if there were any other dangers in this Demon Emperor Palace? No one was willing to take the first step. The first to move was the Spirit Array sect. Although the elders of the 6 Taoist sects had expended a lot of energy in the battle with the monster corpses, their overall strength had been preserved. This was also the foundation of the 6 Taoist sects that was different from the Demon Kings and the Demon sects. In fact, any one of the 6 sects could easily destroy a branch of the Demon sects. But compared to the entire Demon sects, it was far inferior. Although the 6 sects combined could suppress the Demon sects, they could not bear the losses of destroying them. The role of a 7th realm expert was no different from a nuclear bomb. The demon sects, the Taoist sects, the imperial court, and the Buddhist sects were all nuclear powers. No matter how deep the hatred between them was, they would not easily interfere in the war of the upper realms. If they could not control or destroy all the 7th realm experts in one go, they would have to be prepared to be destroyed together. Following the actions of the Spirit Array sect, after some consideration, the other forces followed behind them and slowly approached the palace. Although no one was willing to take the lead, if they stood here, the treasures would not fly out of the Demon Emperor Palace. When the time came, the Spirit Array sect would eat the meat, and they would not even be able to drink the soup. The fact that the Spirit Array sect didn't have any scruples meant that there was no array formation here. They didn't want to be trapped in an array formation after escaping from the monster corpse. Li Mu led the Imperial Court Guardians and Fulu School students, but they did not walk at the front. He felt that something was not quite right. Whether it was the mist in the Demon Emperor's cave abode, the neat rows of stone steels around the Demon Emperor's palace, or the unnatural deaths of the ancient demon clan experts under the stone steels, everything was strange. As the group approached the demonic Emperor Palace, the thin layer of fog in the plaza gradually did not affect their vision. The full view of the Demon Imperial Palace appeared before everyone's eyes. This was a magnificent palace. In terms of size, it couldn't compare to the Great Zhou Imperial Palace, but this palace alone was more luxurious than any other palace in the Imperial Palace. Outside the palace, there were several white jade pillars carved with many reliefs. The reliefs depicted scenes of hundreds of Fae worshipping the Fae Imperial Palace. 3,000 years ago, the Demon Emperor by D was a true demon sovereign. He had countless Fae soldiers under his command, and he had 10 great Fae kings, each of whom was a powerhouse in the upper realm. That was the time when the demon clan was the most powerful in the last 10,000 years. They were so powerful that even the human clan had to avoid them. In front of the Demon Emperor Palace there was a huge statue. The statue was about 3 feet tall, and it was a mighty middle-aged man. He stood in front of the Demon Emperor Palace, overlooking the entire plaza. His body was full of an aura of disdain for the world. It was just a statue, but it made people want to submit to him from the bottom of their hearts. The elders of the 6 sects and the people of the demon path were better off. The subordinates of the 4 great Fae kings were all pale. They lowered their heads, and a look of submission appeared on their faces. In front of the former demon emperor, they couldn't bring up any thoughts of resistance. Li Mu looked at the statue of the demon emperor and only sighed in his heart. No matter how powerful his master was, he couldn't resist the invasion of time. 3,000 years had passed, and no matter how powerful his existence was, it was inevitable for him to return to dust. Li Mu always subconsciously felt that 3,000 years was very short. But thinking about it carefully, the Chinese civilization was only 5,000 years old. 3,000 years ago, the land of China was still the Western Zhou dynasty. At that time, King Wu had just conquered the Zhou dynasty. Suddenly, Li Mu felt that the Demon Emperor Palace in front of him was filled with an ancient aura. The Demon Emperor Palace's gate was wide open. Everyone finally stopped in front of the gate and didn't rush to go in. If the gate of the Demon Emperor Palace was closed, they might break in without hesitation. But as everyone knew, before the Demon Emperor's lifespan ended, he opened up his own cave and treated it as a tomb. Who would open their own tomb and welcome others in? Until they noticed that there was a stone tablet in front of the Demon Emperor Palace. If Emperor Bai wanted to pass down his demon legacy, why didn't he do it back then? Why did he have to wait 3,000 years? No matter how you look at it, it doesn't make sense. However, seeing the group of demon clan members looking at the demon palace with reverence, almost kneeling down to thank it, Li Mu did not question it. He did not expect these one-track-minded demon clan members to understand these things. However, in his heart, he raised his guard by a few degrees. Huan Ji walked in front of the stone tablet and looked at Li Mu and the others. She said, "You can't go in." Li Mu glanced at her and asked, "Why?" Huan Ji puffed out her chest and said confidently, "Didn't you see what is written on the stone tablet? The Demon King wants to pass down the Demon Palace to the Demon Clan. Why are you humans here?" Li Mu crossed his arms and said, "Anyway, we don't know the demon language. Maybe you all colluded to lie to us. Also, humans and demons are both creatures of the world. Humans are born by their mothers. Demons are also born by their mothers. No one is more noble than the other. Why can you all enter but we can't?" Huan Ji's lips moved. She was speechless at Li Mu's words. Actually, from the bottom of her heart, she quite liked what Li Mu said. Humans were the leader of all creatures. They were the noblest race. In comparison, the demon clan was a lower race in their eyes. Many cultivators slaughtered the demon clan and took their souls. They were not guilty of anything. Even the demon clan did not deny the status of humans as the leader of all creatures. They tried so hard to cultivate a human form and become human. Wasn't that an implicit acknowledgement of this? Humans were born by their mothers. Demons were also born by their mothers. No one is more noble than the other. This was the first time she heard a human say this. If Li Mu was not her enemy and did not fight with her for the Demon King's treasure, just based on what he said, she would become friends with him. Unfortunately, he was from the Great Zhou court. They were destined to be enemies. Huan Ji sneered. The Demon King's inheritance is for us demons. You humans also want to fight for it. Do you have any shame? Li Mu retorted. The Demon King said that it was a fated person, not a fated demon. What face do you have to fight for it? Huan Ji said, You are twisting words and forcing logic. Li Mu waved his hand and said, Don't say anything. Why don't we fight? Whoever wins will go in. Li Mu and Huan Ji argued. They realized that the demon sect and the 4 Demon King subordinates had already entered the demon palace. These damn demons did not care about martial ethics. Li Mu and Huan Ji looked at each other and immediately came to an agreement. Humph, humph. The two of them snorted coldly at the same time. They turned around and led their own people in. At the same time, on the first floor of the demon palace, the demons that had just walked in exclaimed at the same time. The consciousness opening pill that helps beasts gain intelligence? The body-shaping pill that allows them to form a demon body? The body-shaping pill that allows body-shaping beasts to transform in advance. This kind of pill can increase the chances of transforming into a demon core. This is the realm-breaking pill that allows level 5 demons to enter level 6. With the fall of the Demon King, weren't these pills lost long ago? Li Mu looked into the hall and saw a row of wooden shelves. On the wooden shelves, there were crystal-clear jade bottles. From the outside, he could see that there were many pills in the jade bottles. On the surface of the pills, there was spirit chi circulating. No pill could be preserved for 3,000 years. These pills had not lost their spirit chi until now. It must be because of these jade bottles. These crystal-clear pill bottles sealed the spirit chi of the pills. In front of each pill bottle, there was an introduction in demon language. Although Li Mu did not understand demon language, he could roughly understand the importance of these pills to the demon clan from the discussions of the demons. These rows of pills, from the consciousness-opening pill to the realm-breaking pill, could provide a one-stop service. In 10 to 20 years, a large group of demon clan experts could be created. From a wild beast to a level 6 demon king, it might only take 30 years. The Elixir Cauldron sect could also achieve this speed. However, the difficulty of refining pills like the realm-breaking pill was no less than getting the Fulu school to draw a sage-level Fulu without Li Mu. Even so, to be able to create a level 5 demon clan expert in 20 years was already very fast. It was no wonder that the demon clan was so powerful when Emperor Bai was the demon king, but then gradually declined. At the very least, he did not pass down this set of refining pills for the demon clan. Other than the elders of the Elixir Cauldron sect who looked at these pills with interest, the rest of the people did not pay much attention to them after a glance. No matter how strong these pills were, they were for the demon clan. There were still differences between the bodies of humans and the demon clan. Pills that were highly nutritious for the demon clan might be fatal for humans. However, to the demons present, these pills were fatally tempting. The demons present were all level 5 demons. A few of them were even at the peak of level 5. As long as they could obtain that realm-breaking pill, they would have a high chance of reaching level 6 and becoming a demon king. Which demon could resist such temptation? Unfortunately, there was only one realm-breaking pill, but there were 20 demon clan experts present. A wolf demon was the fastest. Chapter 405. Huan Ji held the jade bottle in her hand. 9 people from the Charm sect and the Mirage sect guarded her. On Li Mu's side, 4 Imperial consecrators and 5 Fulu school disciples had already surrounded the two sides. After the 5 sect elders looked at each other, they quickly made a decision and looked at Huan Ji. Huan Ji's side felt the pressure increase. Including Huan Ji herself, they only had 10 people here. On the other side, there were 35 people including the consecrators from the Great Zhou. The difference in strength between the two sides was too great. They couldn't even fight. Li Mu looked at Huan Ji and comforted her. "Look, we have more people than you. If we really fight, some of you will die. At that time, you won't be able to keep the item in your hand. Why don't you give it to me now? We won't have to fight. Wouldn't you be wasting your lives?" The 9 people from the Charm sect and the Mirage sect hesitated. Although Li Mu's words were shameless, they were the truth. If they gave it to him, the jade bottle would fall into his hands. If they didn't give it to him after these people killed them, the jade bottle would still fall into his hands. Since the outcome was already decided, why not just give it to him? Huan Ji's face darkened. She threw the jade bottle to Li Mu and gritted her teeth. She said hatefully, "You're not human." Li Mu kept the jade bottle and looked at her. He shook his head and said, "Between the two of us, I don't know who's not human. Don't you know?" Huan Ji was furious. She didn't want to talk to Li Mu. She gritted her teeth and said, "Call those brainless people up." The two went down the first level. Soon, the Demon Sect and Demon King's subordinates flew up. When they saw the Realm Breaker pill, they were like cats that smelled blood. They forgot their real purpose in entering the Demon Emperor's cave. That one page of the Heavenly Book was much more important than the Realm Breaker pill. At this moment, they were in a worse state than when they were attacked by the demon corpse. One of the 3 demon wolves had lost its body. Only its demon soul was left. One of the 3 demon leopards had lost its body. Unlike humans who cultivated their primordial spirit, demon strength would be greatly reduced if they lost their physical bodies. They were basically crippled. Of the 4 snake demons, 2 of them were beaten back to their original forms. Their tails couldn't transform into legs. Of the 5 bear demons, 2 of them could only exist as giant bears. As for the 4 demons of the demon sect, one of them had turned into a white tiger. The other 3 were covered in wounds and their auras were weak. All the demons told themselves in their hearts that the heavenly tomes were more important than the Realm Breaker pill. When they looked around and saw the Dharma treasures on the 2nd level of the Demon Imperial Palace, their eyes lit up and they were eager to try. Li Mu shook his head. No wonder the monster sect was the one that was looked down upon the most amongst the 10 demonic path sections. After all, they weren't humans. Sometimes, when they did things, they had to rely on their beastly instincts. If he interacted more with humans, this situation might change. If he stayed in the demon kingdom and lived with the thoughts of beasts and demons, compared to a cunning fox like Phantom Princess, he was indeed lacking in wisdom. Phantom Princess looked at the green eyes of the demons with a helpless expression. She then said, "Stop looking. Let's go to the 3rd level." If not for Li Mu and the 6 sects of Taoism, it would be easy to obtain the treasures from these demons. Now, she had to borrow their strength to fight against Li Mu and the 6 sects of Taoism. Her words awakened the demons in their dreams. All the demons were awakened by Phantom Princess and followed her to the 3rd level of the Demon Imperial Palace. The 3rd level was the top level of the Demon Imperial Palace. This should be the place that Fulu was referring to. Different from the first 2 levels, the 3rd level of the Demon Imperial Palace only had a platform made of white jade. The jade platform was half the height of a person. A page that Li Mu was familiar with floated on top of the jade platform. The moment they saw the page, many of them revealed a look of desire. However, none of them made a move. Everyone's goal was this page of the heavenly tomes. The first to make a move would definitely become the target of everyone. Therefore, the moment they saw the treasure, everyone quietened down. After a short moment of silence, Phantom Princess suddenly looked at the demons and said, "Everyone, this is the Demon Emperor's cave residence. This heavenly tomes are also the heavenly tomes of the demons. We cannot let it fall into the hands of humans. After we obtain this page of the heavenly tomes, we can comprehend it together." After Phantom Princess finished speaking, the demons fell into deep thought. With the 6 sects of Taoism around, It was impossible for them to obtain the heavenly tomes. If the demon sect obtained it, they might have a chance to comprehend it. If it fell into the hands of humans, they would lose this page of the heavenly tomes forever. At this moment, the forces that represented different interests came to an agreement without any discussion. From then on, the demon imperial palace was completely divided into two forces. One was the 6 sects of Taoism led by Li Mu. The other was the alliance of the 4 sects of demonic Tao and the 4 great demon kings. Originally, the two forces were evenly matched. The elders of the 6 sects of Taoism were individually strong, while the alliance of the demonic Tao and the demon kings had more people. However, after the attacks of the demonic corpses, their strength was greatly reduced. If they were to fight to the death, they might not be a match for Li Mu. However, at this point they had no other choice. The fact that these demons would form an alliance was not out of Li Mu's expectations. After all, the demon emperor was the emperor of the demon race. What was recorded on the Tao page was also the cultivation path of the demon race. To them, the imperial court and the Taoist sects were robbers who came to snatch what belonged to the demon race. However, this time, Li Mu did not want to be a robber. He had no choice. After all, if the Tao page was obtained by the demon race or fell into the hands of the demon sect, they would be able to cultivate more powerful cultivators for them. In the near future, they would become a major threat to the Great Zhou. In that case, Li Mu's dream of conquering the demon nation and destroying the demon sect would be delayed indefinitely. The demon race and the demon sect did not want them to obtain the heavenly tomes. They also did not want the demon race and the demon sect to obtain the Tao page. On the 3rd floor of the demon imperial palace, the atmosphere was extremely tense. A great battle was about to break out. After a long period of silence, a figure shot out from the demon sect's position and headed in the direction of the heavenly tomes. At the south sect's position, an elder's body turned into an afterimage as he tried to stop the demon. In the next moment, everyone moved. The entire 3rd floor of the demon imperial palace erupted with dozens of waves of dermic power at the same time. After dealing with the countless demon corpses, the fulu, elixirs, formation flags, and one-time used dermic treasures in everyone's hands were all used up. Even the zero jade was not much left. Among the 6 Taoist sects, the Fulu school, the Elixir Cauldron sect, and the Spirit Array sect needed to rely on external items. Their strength was greatly reduced, and they could only deal with the slightly weaker subordinates of the Demon King. Elder Xuanzong used his own dermic powers to cast dermic powers. The South sect used their dermic powers for close combat. The North sect relied on the defense of their treasured robes and dermic treasures to suppress the 4 demonic sects. Holding 2 short swords in her hands, Huan Ji gritted her teeth and flew towards Li Mu alone. When he was still in the 4th realm, Li Mu was already able to suppress Huan Ji. Now, his cultivation was not much weaker than Huan Ji's. However, in a space without spiritual qi and without the power of heaven and earth, he could not use his Tao techniques and his strength was also reduced. Even so, he could deal with Huan Ji with ease. The consecrators and the elders of the 6 sects were also suppressing their opponents. The unknown was always the scariest. Not only did the 2 demonic corpses change, even the bloodstains on the ground disappeared without a trace. At this time, the Fulu school elders and a few consecrators of the imperial court were looking for an exit. They had already reached the back of the palace hall. One of the consecrators raised his head and looked. He couldn't help but be shocked. What is this? Behind the wooden shelves was a blood-red coffin. The coffin was 1 zhang long and half a zhang wide. It was completely blood-colored, and as soon as Zhang Xian walked in, the stench of blood assaulted his nostrils. Because it was hidden behind the wooden shelves, no one had noticed it earlier. Soon, the crowd gathered around him. Why is there a coffin here? Could it be that the Lord Demon Emperor is inside this coffin? But why is the coffin blood-colored? Could it be that all the flesh and blood here has been absorbed by this coffin? As everyone surrounded the coffin and discussed endlessly, Li Mu silently retreated to the back of the crowd. In the next moment, a weak golden light flew out from the third floor of the palace hall and flew into Li Mu's sleeve without anyone noticing. Then he raised his head and looked at the coffin in front of him. This coffin was full of oddities. It could even actively absorb the blood of the Demon Emperor Palace. Li Mu wouldn't believe that this was a normal situation even if he was beaten to death. Thinking of the resurrected demonic corpses outside, Li Mu suddenly had a bold guess. Just as this thought appeared in his mind, the blood-colored coffin suddenly shone with a bright red light and exploded with a strong suction force. The two demonic bears closest to the coffin were almost sucked into it. They had to use all their strength to stabilize their bodies. However, the two demonic wolves and leopard demonic beasts that didn't have their demonic bodies and only had their demonic souls left were not so lucky. They were sucked into the blood coffin along with the ghost cultivator from the soul sect whose cultivation had dropped. After their souls touched the blood coffin, they entered it without any hindrance. Then, the suction force on the blood coffin disappeared and there was no more sound from the coffin. However, the blood-colored coffin was rapidly fading away. Soon, the entire coffin became sparkling and translucent like jade. However, it was even more terrifying in the hearts of the crowd. Seeing this strange scene with their own eyes, everyone quickly retreated, wanting to get as far away from the stone coffin as possible. Creak! An ear-piercing sound of rubbing stones suddenly rang in everyone's ears. The lid of the stone coffin slid down little by little. When it was halfway down, it suddenly flew to one side. A figure flew out from the stone coffin and floated above the stone coffin. That figure was very tall, but not burly. In fact, it was just a layer of skin wrapped around bones. This scene shocked everyone. It took a long time for a zombie to develop spiritual intelligence. It was the same for the corpse of a powerhouse. No matter what realm a powerhouse was in, their spirit was entrusted to their soul. When the primordial spirit dissipated, what was left was only a body. Even if the body became a spirit, it didn't have the original memories. This zombie actually gained the ability to think in such a short period of time. Perhaps it had something to do with the few souls he devoured. What made them even more shocked was that after devouring 2 more demons, there seemed to be some flesh and blood on the zombie's body. Its figure also became taller and more imposing. It looked extremely similar to the huge statue at the entrance of the demon palace. Everyone could not help but have a crazy thought in their minds. Could this zombie be the corpse of a demon emperor? P.S. My hand still hurts. I'll have to get used to writing with my voice for a while. Chapter 407. On the first floor of the demon palace. The zombie's eyes were already moving. It scanned the crowd, emitting a bloodthirsty aura. Li Mu had seen many zombies. From walking zombies, jumping zombies, to flying zombies, he had fought many of them. The one in front of him was undoubtedly the strongest zombie he had ever seen. After 3,000 years, the corpse was already at the 6th realm when it had just become a corpse. How powerful must the owner of this corpse have been when he was alive? Li Mu was already suspecting whether this was the corpse of the Demon Emperor by D. At that time, he did not dare to confirm. After all, most cultivators would not leave behind a corpse after death. Before their lifespan ended, most of them would choose to self-destruct and return everything to the dust. Although the physical body could still exist after the spirit dissipated, it was already a different creature from the original body. Once it became a corpse, it would bring disaster to the human world. When people died and destroyed their corpses, they were responsible for others and also responsible for themselves. How could the Demon Emperor not understand this principle? However, after this corpse swallowed the 2 5th-level demons, its body became plump, and it vaguely resembled a human. Its face was vaguely recognizable, and it looked similar to the statues outside the Demon Emperor Palace. Li Mu had no choice but to believe it. The demon corpses outside the Demon Palace and the corpses in the stone coffins inside the palace all proved this point. Li Mu even suspected that the demon corpses were purposely left behind by someone. His goal was to deplete the spiritual power of those who entered here. In fact, to clear the demon corpses, their fulu, elixirs, and spiritual jades were almost depleted. The great battle in the demon palace had also depleted much of their spiritual power. Now that he thought about it, the treasures placed in the demonic emperor palace were more like bait than the inheritance that the white emperor had given to the younger generation of the demonic emperor. They were tempted to kill each other so that the stone coffin would absorb their flesh and blood and awaken the sleeping corpses. If everything was as Li Mu guessed, then Emperor Bai was not a great demon with a demon heart, but an old silver coin from 3,000 years ago. Li Mu could not understand what Emperor Bai was after. Even if his corpse was resurrected, it wouldn't be him anymore. He had sacrificed so many of his subordinates to set up such a trap. What good would it do him? The demon race respected him as the demon emperor. For the past 3,000 years, they had been searching for his cave. However, after they went through all kinds of hardships and entered the demon emperor's cave, they met a group of dumplings the moment they landed. He no longer looked like a bag of bones, and his body had also become more plump. He licked his white fangs, and the bloodthirst in his eyes became even more intense. He slowly flew out of the palace. On the square, the various forces did not have a prior agreement. However, they all had a tacit understanding to work together to kill this zombie. As soon as the zombie flew out, dozens of magical lights landed on its body. At this moment, regardless of whether it was the sixth sex, the demon sect, or the subordinates of the demon kings, they all only had one goal: kill this zombie. Unfortunately, along the way, their fulu, elixirs, formation flags, and other powerful one-time use treasures had long been used up on those demon corpses. After the battle in the demon emperor's palace and the destruction of the gate, most of the magic power in their bodies had been used up. The power of the spells that they could use now was also weakened by more than half. Even so, the simultaneous attack of dozens of fifth realm powerhouses had the power to destroy heaven and earth. The zombie's body was instantly covered by the light of the dozens of spells. Even if everyone's dermic powers were almost depleted, even if the power of their dermic spells was not as strong as before, even if the demonic corpse had the strength of a sixth realm cultivator, when dozens of fifth realm cultivators joined forces, even a true sixth realm cultivator would have to retreat. Boom! The ground shook violently. The aftershock of the spells caused everyone to take a few steps back. When the dust settled, the zombie's clothes had already been torn into shreds. He leaned against the stone tablet in front of the demon emperor's palace. His aura was extremely weak, and there was not much corpse aura left on his body. Even an ordinary sixth realm powerhouse would have a high chance of dying after receiving such an attack. However, this zombie still had a breath of life left. However, there was nothing to be afraid of. At this moment, a bear demon finally could not hold it in any longer. He roared and charged forward. He said furiously, "Give me back my brother's life." Suddenly, a beam of light flashed across the huge statue at the entrance of the demon emperor's palace. A blinding ball of light flew out from the statue and rapidly flew into the zombie's body. The bear demon's expression changed, and he stopped abruptly in his tracks. However, after the ball of light flew into the zombie's body, there were no obvious changes to him. His eyes, which were already somewhat lively, fell into confusion instead. The bear demon gritted his teeth and raised a huge wolf fang club in his hand. He smashed it viciously at the zombie's head. However, in the next instant, he lowered his head and looked on helplessly as a withered hand pierced through his chest and ruthlessly crushed his still-beating heart. The bear demon's blood essence and demon soul were sucked into the zombie's mouth. This scene shocked the others who were watching from afar. The group's combined attack just now could even kill a sixth realm powerhouse. What kind of divine being was this zombie? It clearly only had a breath of life left, but it could still kill the bear demon in such a way. At this moment, everyone even felt that it was impossible to defeat this zombie. The only remaining wolf demon was already on the verge of breaking down. He looked at the zombie from afar and said in a trembling voice, What kind of thing are you? After the zombie swallowed the bear demon's blood essence and soul, his flesh and blood grew a little. He already looked somewhat like a human. The confusion in his eyes gradually disappeared. He stood in front of the demon emperor's palace and spoke for the first time. I am Emperor Bai. However, Emperor Bai's memories were just memories. Memories had no consciousness, and he could not feel the passage of time. To the zombie that believed itself to be the White Emperor, this meant that it had only slept for a short while. When it opened its eyes, 3,000 years had already passed. Normal people might not be able to accept such a reality. Emperor Bai was indeed the demon emperor. He had once been a supreme expert. After a short moment of confusion, his eyes regained clarity and his expression gradually calmed down. He looked at Li Mu and asked, "Which is the most powerful country on the Zhu continent now? Is it still the Chu dynasty? How many generations have they passed down?" Li Mu looked at him and said calmly, "The Chu dynasty has been gone for 2,500 years. In these 2,500 years, the central mainland has changed 3 dynasties. Now, the most powerful dynasty on the Zhu continent is called the Great Zhou." Emperor Bai's face showed a look of reminiscence. He muttered, "So those old guys from the Chu dynasty are also dead?" Li Mu nodded and said, "They've been dead for almost 3,000 years." His gaze swept across the crowd one by one, and he said to himself, "Which sect do you belong to?" Facing the demon emperor from 3,000 years ago, the elders of the 6 sects did not dare to slight him. Fulu School of Taoism, Danding Sect of Taoism, Xuanzong of Taoism, Northern Sect of Taoism. Emperor Bai pondered for a while and shook his head. Never heard of it. Taoism was born less than 2,000 years ago. It was normal that Emperor Bai had not heard of it. His eyes continued to wander. When he glanced at the people of Diabolism, he paused for a moment and said, "Are you from Diabolism?" The people of Diabolism bowed and said respectfully, "Greetings, Senior Emperor Bai." Emperor Bai finally looked at the few remaining demons and said, "Are you doubting my identity?" The demon race had always been stubborn. A bear demon gritted his teeth and said, "Even a demon emperor can't live for more than 3,000 years. Who the hell are you? How dare you pretend to be a demon emperor?" Emperor Bai glanced at him and said, "It's been 3,000 years. Your shaking bear clan is still as stupid as before. If I had known, I wouldn't have taught you demonic techniques back then. I would have let you all be beasts for all eternity." Perhaps because no one had spoken for 3,000 years, Emperor Bai was different from those experts who liked to put on airs. He was not stingy with his words. At first, he stuttered a little, but soon, his speech became smoother and clearer. He stood in front of the huge statue and said slowly, "That's right. Even I can't defeat the heavenly Tao. My lifespan is only 300 years. A melancholy expression appeared on his face as he continued, "But I can't accept it. I've cultivated for 300 years, 290 years, and obtained countless opportunities. It wasn't easy for me to cultivate to the heavenly demon realm." Chapter 409. Another bear demon was killed. Even though Emperor Bai looked extremely weak, no one would think that he was truly at the end of his rope. His companion died tragically. Another tiger demon from the demon sect shouted, "Everyone, attack together. I don't believe he can take another attack." Everyone was silent. The next moment, countless rays of Dharma spells lit up and engulfed Emperor Bai. At this point, no one cared about using up their Dharma powers. If they did not kill the demon corpse in front of them, they would be the ones to die. However, this time, Emperor Bai did not just stand there and take the attacks. His body disappeared. When he reappeared, he was behind another bear demon. His sharp nails pierced into the bear demon's body. In an instant, the bear demon turned into a dried corpse and fell to the ground. Another dozen or so attacks came, and Emperor Bai's figure disappeared mysteriously once again. At the same time, Li Mu felt a chill run down his spine. All the hair on his body stood on end, and he smelled a thick corpse aura. The next moment, Emperor Bai appeared behind him. His sharp black nails pierced towards his body. A golden light shot out from Li Mu's body and bounced Emperor Bai far away. Although he was not injured, Li Mu's face darkened. This corpse was obviously severely injured, but it could still teleport. If this continued, no one would be able to attack it. Sooner or later, they would become its food. He took out a Fulu without hesitation and activated it with his Dharma powers. A golden armored soldier holding a giant sword appeared in the void. When the sixth realm golden armored soldier appeared, the space was still stable and showed no signs of collapsing. Looking at Emperor Bai's figure, Li Mu's guess was confirmed. Due to the protection of the flask space, sixth realm cultivators could not enter without an owner. At this moment, the newly born zombie obtained Emperor Bai's memories and his inheritance. From now on, the cave abode had an owner. However, this was not good news, because the owner of the flask space was no different from a god in his own space. The golden armored soldier waved his giant sword and slashed at Emperor Bai's body. Emperor Bai's body disappeared. The giant sword missed. Seeing this, Huan Ji hesitated for a moment before taking out a black jade talisman and crushing it. A thick black aura gushed out of the jade talisman and formed a demon soul with two horns on its head. Its body also exuded the aura of a sixth-stage cultivator. Under Huan Ji's command, the demon soul flew towards Emperor Bai. At the same time, the giant sword of the golden armored soldier slashed down again. The monster soul released by Huan Ji suddenly disappeared. The next time it appeared, it was already under the golden armored godly soldier's giant sword. With a slash of the sword, the demonic soul was split into two. Although it quickly merged back together, the demonic soul had become much more illusory, and its aura had also withered. Within a short period of time, the last two demons from the monster sect had died at the hands of Emperor Bai. At this moment, Emperor Bai's face was rosy and his hair had grown out. Other than the corpse aura on his body, he looked no different from an ordinary person. His originally weak aura also became stronger once again. At that moment, everyone was in despair. Emperor Bai was undefeatable in this space. After killing these demons, Emperor Bai finally turned his gaze towards the elders of the six sections. His figure disappeared once again. Li Mu used his mind and the Dao Bell flew out. It suddenly enlarged and covered Li Mu, the elders of the six sects, and the few imperial consecrators. Dong! A buzzing sound came from the Dao Bell. Emperor Bai's figure appeared but was blocked outside the Dao Bell. He stretched out his claws and stabbed at the Dao Bell, but his nails were broken. Although they grew back quickly, he could not do anything to the Dao Bell. Immediately after, he started to cast a series of powerful spells. However, he could only make the Dao Bell ring but could not enter the bell. Suddenly, as if he had discovered something, Emperor Bai's figure distorted and turned into a wisp of green smoke. Li Mu's expression changed slightly. The jade bottle that he had snatched from Huan Ji at the second level of the monster palace appeared in his hand. He didn't even think about it before crushing the jade bottle. The remaining crack on the Dao Bell suddenly emitted a golden light. The last crack finally disappeared. Li Mu originally did not want to obtain the jade bottle, but he could feel the Dao Bell's desire for it. According to his guess, the bottle should contain Genesis Chi that could help repair the Dao Bell. With this Genesis Chi, the Dao Bell was finally complete again. At the original crack, the light smoke turned back into Emperor Bai's figure. He looked at the people inside the Dao Bell with some reluctance and flew towards the three people from the Soul Sect. The three soul cultivators wanted to escape, but there was nowhere to run. In a few breaths, their souls were sucked into Emperor Bai's stomach. At this point, the four monster kings had suffered heavy losses. The people from the Demon Path Soul Sect and Monster Path's Demon Path Soul Sect had been completely wiped out. Only the people from the Illusion Sect and Maison Sect beside Huan Ji were safe, but only temporarily. Li Mu's golden armor soldiers and Huan Ji's demon soul could not get close to Emperor Bai at all. As long as they were within 10 feet of Emperor Bai, he would teleport them far away. They could not even touch the corner of his clothes. Both of them had a time limit. It would not be long before they disappeared. Li Mu could not allow Emperor Bai to continue killing. Even though he was on a different side from Huan Ji and the others, if they all died, it would be his turn to die. While Emperor Bai caught 2 more demons and absorbed their essence blood, Li Mu controlled the Dao Bell to cover the rest of the people. Huan Ji silently lowered her head and fell silent. It was easy to take revenge, but difficult to repay kindness. This was the consensus of the Heavenly Fox clan. It was also the experience passed down by the ancestors of the Heavenly Fox clan. Although she did not want to accept Li Mu's kindness, they were all in the same boat now. If they wanted to live, they had to put aside all their grievances and work together to deal with their only enemy. Li Mu looked at Huan Ji and said, "What other trump cards do you have? Take them out. If not, we will all be trapped here." Huan Ji thought for a while and took out a jade talisman. She said, "We cannot send messages in the flask space, but this talisman contains a drop of my essence blood. If we crush this talisman, even if we are outside the flask space, the mother talisman in my brother's hands will sense it. He will know that we are in danger." Li Mu asked, "So what if your brother knows?" Huan Ji said, "My brother is the great elder of Meizong sect. He is outside now." Li Mu understood what Huan Ji meant. Although they could not tell the people outside what happened, as long as they knew that Huan Ji was in danger, the dozens of level 6 experts outside would work together to open up the space again. By then, even if Emperor Bai had 3 heads and 6 arms, he would not be able to fight against so many experts. Within the Dao Bell, Huan Ji crushed the jade talisman without hesitation. Outside the Demon Emperor's cave in the valley, a handsome man was sitting cross-legged. His expression suddenly changed and he stood up abruptly. The great elder of Meizong sect asked, "What happened?" The man said, "Huan Ji is in danger." He said without hesitation, "Open up the space." The great elder of Meizong sect, King Qingguang, and the expert from Meizong sect flew up at the same time. This fox from Meizong sect was the son of the Heaven Lord of Illusions. The Heaven Lord of Illusions had an important position in the entire Demon Dao. This operation was led by Meizong sect. The 4 demon kings also floated in the air. The Taoist sect and the Great Zhou Court had joined forces. In order to balance the powers, they had temporarily formed an alliance with the Demon Dao. The 8 of them gathered their dermic powers at one point. A hole gradually tore open in the void. A powerful aura that surpassed level 5 experts emanated from the hole. When they felt the aura, their expressions changed at the same time. How can there be level 6 experts? What a strong corpse aura. Someone from corpse sect has sneaked in. But why is the space still stable? On the opposite side, the sloppy Taoist priest also stood up and said angrily, "Damn it." Although this was the White Deity Cave abode, and the demon corpse was at the peak of the flying zombie realm, comparable to the 6th level, it would be countered by the Dharma. If Li Mu could use the Dharma powers of the 5th level, he might be able to defeat her. Li Mu looked at Phantom Princess and asked, "Do you want to work together?" Phantom Princess's eyes flashed and she asked, "How?" Li Mu leaned over and whispered a few words into her ear. Phantom Princess was stunned and then frowned. "You want my primordial spirit to possess your body?" Li Mu was surprised. "You've cultivated your primordial spirit?" Demons did not cultivate their primordial spirits as they had their own cultivation methods. They did not cultivate their souls or condense their souls. Since Phantom Princess managed to condense her demon soul into an primordial spirit, it meant that other than Demon Buddha, she also cultivated Taoist techniques. Phantom Princess did not answer directly and only said, "Is there any other way?" Li Mu nodded. "Yes." Phantom Princess quickly asked, "What other way?" Li Mu said, "Or I can possess your body." Phantom Princess said decisively, "Don't even think about it." Li Mu looked at her and said, "If not for the fact that there is no other way, do you think I would want you to do it?" Being possessed was a big taboo for cultivators. Li Mu knew that Phantom Princess would not agree to him being possessed, so he did not even mention it. As for himself, it was not the first time he was possessed, so he was not that against it. In this kind of matter, he had given his first opportunity to Suhi, and then he had given it to her a few more times. After that, he had given it to the Empress, but that was under the circumstances where Li Mu already had great trust in him and the others. Li Mu naturally did not have much trust in Phantom Princess, but there was nothing he could do about it. There were only 3 choices in front of him. Either Phantom Princess possessed his body, or he possessed Phantom Princess. Or the two of them could continue to wait in the bell until the demon corpse changed its mind and let them out. After making this decision, Li Mu struggled intensely in his heart before finally convincing himself. Anyway, it was not the first time. He had been possessed by ghosts and humans before, so it did not matter if there was a fox. Although this kind of thinking was somewhat self-destructive and hopeless, there was really no better way at the moment. Phantom Princess lowered her head and bit her lips, as if she was going through a decision in her heart. Her primordial spirit entering someone else's body was something that she could not accept. What's more, this person was her enemy. But when she thought of Li Mu's primordial spirit entering her body, she instantly felt that this matter was not so difficult to accept.